Live from the virtual Daytona International Speedway, this is the 2018 iRacing Daytona 500. We're from high above the World Center of Racing. We're happy to say good morning, sim racing fans, and welcome up top into the RaceSpot TV booth alongside of myself, Evan Pasoko, joined by Randy Cheneth, and downstairs, twisted and tweaking and dials to bringing us to you is Mr. Hugo Louise. And Randy, nice and early at him this morning. It is Daytona Day, and before we get the NASCAR season underway, we go racing once more in the iRacing Daytona 500. This is the fourth different race, though, of this iRacing Daytona 500 this year. So if you have not found the success that you wanted to over the course of the last 3-4 days, this is your last best opportunity. I think we've got at least 7 different splits going, but of course we're happy to welcome you in to top split coverage here on RaceSpot TV and iRacing Live.
Yeah, any of these guys that have struggled, this is going to be their last chance to put in a good one. Of course, there's technically 2 different championships, so you make the argument that you have 8 opportunities between the Open and the Fixed Championship. This being the Open stuff, you're going to have a lot of the best racers here bringing you the green flag and running around this Daytona International Speedway at near 200 miles an hour for 500 miles. So this is going to be an exciting one and a nice little sneak preview for what we see on Tuesday when that NASCAR Peak Antifreeze iRacing series kicks off.
A lot of familiar names that will correlate between this morning and Tuesday evening. It is going to be a long one from Daytona. We're happy that you're up with us. Let's introduce you to the starting grid as we go trackside and take a look to how we will rack them and stack them. So pole position in this one will belong to the number 1 machine. Jimmy Mullis, top-ranked driver, coming into this race, brings us the green flag this morning, and he will be joined on the front row by the number 8 of Chris Shearburn. Back on row 2, going to be the number 3 of Zach Novak and Casey Kerwin in the 2 car. They will start 3rd and 4th respectively, along with Nick Hershka and Dallas Pataska 5th and 6th on row number 3. Then we have an exact tie on qualifying times. Both Will Cooley and Blake Bryant with a 47.310. They start in 7th and 8th position. Alex Bergeron and Patrick Mallet 9th and 10th.
11th spot, you have Brandon Coppinger with Sam Harris in 12th, Robbie Roy in 13th, Nigel DeYoung in 14th, Corey Brown 15th, Joe Thompson 16th, Glenn Murphy Jr. in 17th, Graham Bolin 18th, 19th, you have Garrett Mashburn with Manuel Sanchez running out the top 20.
You on to the middle of the pack where things are going to be rough right from the get-go. 21st belongs to Mike Bruno, Everett Lane, same row, rolling off in 22nd. Then you'll have Brian Rant in 23rd position, Dustin Johnson 24th, and the final 2 drivers to take times in qualifying. 25th for Marcus Lindsay and Tony Rupasard in 26th position. So first provisional start from 27th. It'll be Ryan Lowe and Michael Guest back on that row in 27th and 28th. Malik Ray will roll off in 29th position, and Matt Adams is 30th.
Of course, getting a little bit deeper down this field, you have Logan Powers in 31st, Josh Mickelmore in 32nd, Brandon Kohler 33rd, Richard Holiday 34th, and Travis Schaefer rounding out the 35-car field, taking us around this Daytona International Speedway for 200 laps.
As we head around under pace speeds, a lot of the upcoming 200 laps at 500 miles are going to be under green flag conditions and well up to speed. And we don't need to introduce this racetrack for you. The Daytona International Speedway is where we always kick off both the NASCAR and, of course, the NASCAR iRacing seasons. This racetrack clocking in at 2.5 miles in length. That's how we get to our 500-mile total distance by doing 200 laps around this place. Other than that, the 31 degrees of banking at about 3 stories tall in the corners is what makes this racetrack what it is. And we have seen some competitive racing throughout iRacing Speed Weeks, if you will. But of course, this is the main event of the season, and there'll be a couple of these iRacing special events, of course, as the season goes on. And taking a look to the field, well, there's drivers in here who have already competed in some of the 500s in the last few days. But again, this is your last chance for the Open, guys. If you want to get a win in a thing called the iRacing Daytona 500. Pace car's going to make the sharp left-hand turn off to the safety of the pit lane, and we are ready to get Daytona Day underway. American Ethanol green flag flies. We're racing from Daytona. It's pole sitter Jimmy Mullis for the first of 200 laps.
Down in the corner number 1, everyone's just going to be looking to be nice and calm here, Evan. Long race. You're going to be in these cars for several hours today. Don't get overly aggressive as they go through the high banks of Daytona for the first time through corners number 1 and 2 and head down this long Daytona super stretch down this back straightaway for the first time. Everyone is just being nice, calm, cool, and collected here in all of these Cup cars. They hit themselves into 3 and 4.
You can see, obviously, early drivers trying to duck down to the inside of the racetrack. Well, it might not be the most thrilling stuff. Single file racing, probably a good idea over the course of 200 laps. Even if you're not pushing each other, the risk for making a little bit of a mistake that can especially snowball at a place like Daytona is that much more amplified. But at the completion of the first 2.5 miles, your race leader is your pole sitter, Jimmy Mullis. So the outside's fallen back just a tad bit. Not all that bad for Chris Shearburn, who started in second. He was third across the line, although you do see the likes of that 31 machine coming up on the inside, the 14 as well, of Will Cooley. So the outside line is struggling. Drivers have moved down to the bottom. Casey Kerwood, a good example of that, who runs right now in the number 5 position. So inside, and as we expected, is the place to be as we head back to turns 3 and 4 with about a 6-car length advantage for the guys down low.
The top side really starting to go away. I've heard from drivers that the top is tending to be a struggle, and I think it's going to be sort of a factor of two things. That top side struggles, and if the bottom side is just overall faster, not to mention the fact that we're going to have such a long race with this. People are going to want to be patient. I think we're going to be in, at least in the first half to 3/4 of this race, a lot of people probably sitting and cruising single file in this one.
It's exactly what you would want to see, and again, these drivers are very experienced on the surface, especially when running in the top split of this 500. And of course, we've seen 3 of them already to this point. Michael Guest, along with Pierre Vernet and Michael Guest, have won the 3 Open Daytona 500 top splits so far to this point. So Michael Guest has gotten 2 of them up until this point. Yes, he is competing in this one. He runs right back in 26th position as of now. But you've got plenty of time again to get up there. We're working lap 4 of 200 from Daytona, but qualifying in a good position most definitely helps you out. Now you're really seeing why starting up on the outside is struggling, because look at the 8 car. Well, I said he was about 3 spots back, and then 5 spots back. He's still the lead car on the outside of the racetrack, Randy, but that means he has fallen from second to right now about 17th position, and nobody on the inside is going to give him a spot in line, so expect that to go down even more.
Yeah, he's really struggling up there, isn't he, as he continues to fall down the order, and I think he's going to go basically all the way to the back of the field because I do not see very many openings. Basically, all 35 cars got themselves single file, and now it's just the 8 car, the lone wolf, up there alongside the top of the racetrack, and absolutely no drafting help. He's going to have to 100% go to all the way down to the back of the field.
I did see a couple of guys closer to the front, at least thinking about making a move to the outside of the racetrack. Nobody actually committed to it, but saw a couple of drivers sticking a nose out and considering it as an option, but it looks like everybody wants to stay tucked in line, so there is no surprise. The drivers stacked up 1, 2, 3, 4, all drivers who started on the inside of their respective rows. So Mullis started first, that's where he runs. Novak goes third to second. You've got the third of Krishke, who goes 5th to third, and of course Will Cooley 7th to 4th. The first drivers to then kind of bail on the outside was Kerwood, who was able to jump down Bryant Mallet Harris, who continued through 5, 6, 7, and 8. All started up top, but were able to find spots down on the inside of the racetrack. Again, unfortunately, not the word for Chris Shearburn, as he eventually finds a spot in line, but it is in 21st position.
That's, you're not going to like starting off your day like this, are you? Dropping 19 spots in the opening 6 laps of the iRacing Daytona 500 as he now gets himself in line and going to have to try to figure somehow, some way to get himself back up near the front. Everyone else has pretty much gotten themselves in line around where they started. There's a handful of pickuppers, +2, +3 spots all the way up and down the field, but he's really the only big loser or gainer we have in this race. Dallas Pasaka, he's another one though, -12. He dropped down from 6th all the way down to 18th, but beyond that, everyone currently sits pretty much where they started, and it's going to be nice and hanging out as we have now a little bit of a 3-car train in the back trying to get that top side sorted out. Maybe we can see them push and try to get strong up front.
And that's just behind the 8 cars, you know, the 9 car right there, first driver up in line. That's Michael Guest, who's won 2 of these iRacing Daytona 500s already this year alone, working with the 11 Malik Ray, and the 4 cars thinking about it, although Ryan Lowe really not willing to commit. They've got cars, 3 of them's not bad, they're just not making any progress, and you're already sitting 2.5 seconds off of the race leaders. You really don't want to give up anything additional as the 21 Rashida Garrett Mashburn pulls out a line. He hits pit road, only driver down there at lap number 8.
Yeah, I'm not sure what this is as he comes down to the end of lap number 7. I think it's going to be likely a full stop for him as he pulls down into the box, and it's going to be really weird. Not the sort of timing you'd expect someone to see them come down pit road, and he rolls out with fuel only. So an interesting strategy call here by the 21. Not going to go down a lap because it's just a top off. Didn't take any tires, but going to put him well down the order here. And I don't know if I like the call. I wonder if he almost went out there on the wrong set or something. Didn't have enough fuel in the car. I don't know what the deal is, but I don't know. I can't make much sense of that for someone going off cycle this early.
The 2 car way up to the outside of the racetrack. Casey Kerwin in 5th, just kind of stretching the legs out. I don't think it was any serious attempt to make a move to the outside of the racetrack, but definitely when you talk about Mashburn, he's now way off the pace. He and Johnson are really the only 2 drivers who have lost contact with the pack. And if this race is to go green for any good amount of time, obviously that is not very good. Now, we have seen very different iRacing Daytona 500s this year. We've seen one go already with 9 cautions overall, one with 5, and one with 1. So there's no guaranteed way that we can predict just what kind of pace this race is going to have. But if we get anything more than 15 laps on the green, those guys in the back without the draft are going to find themselves a lap down far too early and in a really tough spot.
Yeah, that's really going to be the main thing that you'd really watch for, isn't it? Is where are we going to get a lot of green flag run? And I have to say, the way this race is forming up, I think we're going to spend a long time under green. Everyone has been really patient through these opening 10 laps. They've gotten themselves locked down on that yellow line early, and everyone's just pretty much cruising out there. I don't think we're going to see any over aggressiveness, and really for a long while in this one. It's going to probably be up until maybe the end of the race, as soon as people start getting really dicey. They come off corner number 4 to end the first 25 miles of this one. And, well, Jimmy Mullis has led us pretty much all the way from that drop of the green flag. So I think we're going to be spending a long time under these very conditions right here.
That's what you kind of want to see, and it's difficult, especially for, obviously, the teammates in the field. A lot of the guys that run in the NASCAR PK to Freeze iRacing series, if they've got teammates, affiliates, buddies in this race specifically, or just anybody, you got a teammate, it's hard to get to them unless you qualify right in and around each other. We did see a good amount of drivers not take time in qualifying, which is why everybody on the grid about 27th on the back ended up taking provisionals. That is a strategy, obviously, to just hang out in the back, stay away from where you would expect the pack racing to be up in the front of the field. And of course, it's a little bit easier to find your friends. But when it comes to pit stops, if your teammates aren't around you, you're going to have to figure out what strategy call everybody else is on. And obviously, green flag pit stops at Daytona, one of the more difficult exchanges these guys will be dealing with on this year in the NASCAR iRacing series.
Yeah, that's really the big thing. And also just keeping an eye on that 21 car of Garrett Mashburn. We saw him come down pit road really early. He's now getting put a lap down. Pretty much the lone car you see sort of up on that 3rd lane. There's another sort of quartet of drivers in the middle, a little deeper on down the field. But with the section of that, still the only drivers up near that top side of the racetrack. Going to be 3 wide for a moment as you have that group of cars in the middle. And, of course, him solo up along the top. But you see he's just falling like a rock as everyone cycles their way through here, through the tri-oval for lap number 12. And, well, that's not exactly how you want to start your race, is it? Go with this strategy call to get fuel early for whatever reason and end up in that lap down and hoping for a caution to get yourself the lucky dog and get yourself back on the lead lap before you go down another lap.
It's going to be very difficult to get that lap back strictly because Dustin L. Johnson in the 18 is very quickly going to become that first car 1 lap down. Now, obviously, we saw Mashburn start with the pack, come down pit road. That's how he lost contact. We haven't seen anything like that out of Dustin L. Johnson in the number 18 machine. However, he did lose touch with the pack. and he has since fallen 26 seconds off pace, or about half a lap behind these drivers. They just come out of the tri-oval now as he gets set to set it off into turn number 3. But you're talking about a significant speed difference of about 9 to 8 miles an hour all the way around this Daytona International Speedway. So once he goes a lap down running in 34th position, Mashburn then finds himself as the second car 1 lap down and no longer in a lucky dog position if we were to see a yellow. And not that I think that's the final nail in the coffin there. A lot can happen over the course of the race, but that is definitely not how you want to start 500 miles off. And for whatever reason, if it was some sort of an issue that brought Mashburn down pit road, or if he was trying to predict when we would get a yellow, I'm not sure. But it is a tough blow for him because he's the first driver 1 lap down, as you noted, in the opening 15 laps here for Daytona.
Yep, not how you want to start it out here. We're starting to get a little bit of a top line going in the back of the field. It's sort of starting with Richard Holliday. He's the last car in line, and sort of the lead car up there is, I believe, the 9 car of Michael Guest, who you mentioned I think has won 1 or 2 of these races thus far this weekend. He moves himself up to the top side of the racetrack, and a couple other drivers starting to opt to maybe trying to make that top side work as the 12 jumps up top in line. That's Dallas Paseka. He's going to try to make something work as well. They're not making much headway very far forward, but good to see people trying to get racy, and I think moving their way forward as opposed to just keeping themselves single file here as they're nearing the end of the first 20 laps of this.
And that's how you have to kind of attack these very long races. You figure you have to go 500 miles in 200 laps. It's a very daunting task to simply say, okay, well, let's just go race for 200 miles. So you kind of compartmentalize everything into pit stops. We get to, into the 30s and close to the 40s, and we're going to make a pit stop. Once you get your fuel number, once you kind of figure out what everybody else is going to be doing, and you try to make an equal run. And all of a sudden, you cut this race down into about fifths or so, and it's not as long as it may have seemed like at the start of the night. There is no doubt that even if we see like what we saw in the very first of these 500s, from obviously with the 9 cautions up until the one that happened just yesterday with only 1 yellow, at least at the top split yellow, you're still going to be racing in the car under green flag conditions for well over 2 hours, even if this race stays green all the way through. So you're only going to make it so much easier on yourself, but I think these drivers obviously would prefer not to go racing under yellow as opposed to green, aside from the fact that, well, if you're in a caution flag condition, you're wrecking cars out of the race, but also under green, well, you can play those and implement, I guess I should say, those strategies much more effectively. It's those yellows that get in the middle of those fuel runs and chop everything up, and that's when things get crazy, when you kind of throw that strategy out the window and just fly by the seat of your pants. I'm sure we'll see that later on in this race regardless, but at this point, you want things to be as in control as you possibly can.
That's really the big thing to think about. You want to be just nice, calm, cool, and collected here as everyone's still being nice and courteous with one another. And that's the big thing. You've not seen, even though we've seen that top group come up, you've not seen any of these moments where guys are trying to shove themselves down into an optimal line or really potentially, quote-unquote, shoving anyone out of the way. So just nice, calm, and cool driving from everyone thus far. And that's what you like to see, is just all about survival for here as we're closing in on about half distance of this first fuel run here in a moment.
Working lap 18 as we run right now. Going to be interesting to see if Justin Johnson loses his lead lap, or if he'd in some way be able to time it. It would take quite the stroke of luck to be getting lapped right as your leaders come by, but if that happens relatively close to each other, he could try to come down pit road with them, and then obviously you would be back out in the back, not on the lead lap, but if you're able to be in a draft and get those extra 8 to 9 miles an hour, you're not going to lose any more time. That would be a good way to stay as that lucky dog. Obviously, as the likes of Garrett Mashburn is tucked up in line, he's behind the number 26 car right now, kind of a part of this lead pack. So Mashburn, the lap machine, is tucked in line behind Josh Mitchellmore in 31st position. That's how he's been able to reduce how fast he's been dropping to the pack. First time tonight, though, just as you'd expect, Randy, maybe everybody wants to single file out and get ready to hit pit road shortly. The second line is coming up at the outside of the racetrack, just because we've seen that big line down low does not in any way mean the outside of the racetrack does not work here. And now we have a significant number of cars up top making a push, led by the 19 of Samuel Harris.
That's what we're going to probably expect to see all day, sort of the ebb and flow of that top line. There's going to be times where it gets really, really strong, and other times where it pretty much just drops off and gets like we had in the early stages of this one, where it's not very valid whatsoever, and it's still a little bit of a struggle, it seems like, for these guys to make much headway from that top groove of the racetrack. It seems like can't quite get up there, as have that now lap car that they're going to be putting a lap down of Dustin Johnson here in just a moment, and that's going to make them 3 wide down through corners number 1 and 2, actually probably closer down the back straightaway. So should be nice, cool, nice and calm for everybody for this 3 wide moment once again. A couple of those cars get back down into that low line as they get ready to put Dustin a lap down, as other people start thinking about maybe hopping up to that top groove as well.
Right there you see just the sheer speed difference between the guys in the draft and the 18 Michigan Johnson all by himself, and he might be able to tag onto the back of the pack if he's fortunate enough here, but they're 3 wide, a little bit tight that time, but a 4. That second line looks like they're easily enough able to get on by, and the 25 car going to get shuffled out of line, not the position you want to be in for Brandon Carpenter, who top side of the racetrack pushed up, and the 9 car I think tried as best as he could to wait up, but eventually Michael Guest had to go to the inside of the racetrack, and Carpenter dropping like an anchor got tossed out the back end of that thing. He'll go from about 17th position to well outside of the top 25 in the blink of an eye.
That's really the big thing. You can't make any little mistake, and now if you're Brandon Carpenter, you fall all the way back to the tail end of this line. You're now pretty much the last car in the groove, except for Garrett Mashburn, who's just out in front of the lap down, and I think Tony Ruppistard is back there as well as Travis Schaefer. So just that one little mistake and you lose the pack. And I think if you're Brandon, you're now 5, 6 or so car lengths back off those that big lead pack that's still all together. You're gonna have to try to work really hard to reel that little group back in. Luckily he's not dropped too far back, but that just has to be a bit of a warning for everybody. 23 laps in, you make a little mistake, you get deeper and deeper into the field, no one is going to let you get back down in line, and you're going to the rear of this train.
We have seen that charge from the outside of the racetrack very much stall out where they run right now. The 19 Harris has dropped back about 5 spots. They got up to, at best, about 7th position. Harris right now in 12th. The 24 car alongside him of Robbie Roy. He looks to jump back up into the top 10 after getting a little bit of a resurgence here. But, I mean, you can definitely see outside of the racetrack when they got those 7 cars, which is where we sit now, good amount of speed, good amount of momentum they can challenge. But it's, again, difficult to sustain that up on the outside. It tends to come, as you talked about, Randy, the ebbs and flows, it tends to come in waves. You get a big burst of speed, you get a great run on the outside of the racetrack, and you might be able to get up to 7th. But then if you don't complete that pass, get all the way up to the front, or just completely give up on the outside and try to tuck back in line once you get up into the top 10, then you just kind of stall out there. It's difficult to keep that sustained pressure on the outside of the racetrack, especially, 7 cars is good up top, but you've got about 25 on the inside.
Yeah, and right now Alex Bergeron has given Sam Harris one big push on that top side, and they're moving their way forward pretty decently right now, wheel to wheel with the 5 of Patrick Mallet, and heading their way towards the 15 car of Blake Bryant. So they want to try to make a dent on this top 5 before they get to the end of this fuel run down this long Daytona super stretch for the 25th time in this one for Sam Harris and all the rest of these guys in this upper pack, as Alex is going to try to close on that 19 car. Still, everyone being really calm, cool, and collected, not pushing too hard. It's good to see that top group starting to gain a little bit of momentum.
You have to wonder, are you going to be able to get all the way up front if they continue to put the heat on him? It's going to be a race high for the number 19 machine this time by for Harris. 7th. Thought he might have been able to sneak out and beat the 50 to Blake Bryant to the lawn. If he would have been able to do so, get 6 would have been the highest he's been tonight. With that run up on the outside of the racetrack, they continue to keep it strong, but not the best time to be up on the outside of the racetrack, Randy. If you don't get there, we're working lap 26 right now. Pit stops on the horizon. You're not going to be able to get the pit road very easily from the outside of the racetrack. So I think the 19 and everybody else recognizes that sense of urgency. They know they got to get this move done now as opposed to later.
That's really the big thing, then. That's what's so curious to me, the fact that these guys waited until this far in this opening run to start making this top groove work. Because normally, somewhere around the midpoint to 3/4 away through that fuel tank is when you want to start thinking about, okay, when am I going to cycle down to that bottom groove and start getting my way off towards pit road. It could be very well possible that these guys are expecting to go a little bit on the long side. It is one of those things that you can always have happen in these cup cars around these plate tracks with Daytona and Talladega. You save fuel for a little bit and suddenly you're able to get yourself running an extra lap or two compared to everyone else. And if that's the case, it doesn't really matter if you're in that upper groove. If everyone else underneath you cuts down to pit road a couple laps earlier than you do, then you're going to still have an open opportunity. But at the same time, if you're up there trying to push your way to the front, the way the likes of Harris and Bergeron, and I think Michael guessed the number of cars who we have up on that top groove, probably going to be keeping that foot planted to the floor. Doubt you're going to be not using that much fuel.
28 laps in, it has been Jimmy Mullis first across the start-finish line each and every time, as we still work caution-free in the iRacing Daytona 500. Rookie lap number 28 of 200, Mullis, Novak, Krischke, Cooley, Kerwin, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Of course, watching the lane up on the outside of the racetrack. This is not a group of guys that had been up top all race, by the way. You got the 16 of Alex Bergeron. He's somebody who started on the safe confines of the inside row of the racetrack. You've got more drivers tucked up top. The 17 of Graham Boland, of course, the 29 car as well of Richard Holiday. He's somebody who's really used this outside to his advantage after starting in 34th position, using the outside to move on up. And right there you saw the 16 of Alex Bergeron actually decide to go back down in line, so that outside has kind of fallen apart in the last couple of laps. You see the 19 sliding way back now once they lose that momentum, and that might have been one of the last best opportunities. They got a great run 1 to 2 laps ago, and now they're back where they were 5 laps ago outside of the top 10, and again trying to find something a little bit extra to finish this thing off. There is a big gap though between the 15 and the 5. I think it's going to be a little bit too far ahead for the 19 to tuck in line. But when I saw Bergeron kind of give up on that outside, he was in a great position, second in that line. He wanted to get down to the inside. That tells me he's concerned about getting on pit road in and out.
Yeah, it's just seems to be like that top side can't really get anything going. They aren't getting enough drivers up there to try to push, and that's shouldn't become as too much of a surprise this early in a 500-mile race, especially we're just 1/3 or closing in on 1/3 of half distance. So these guys just nice, calm, cool, and collected. 22 minutes into this thing is just getting close to the end of this fuel run. They're moving about 3/4 of the way through this thing. Is down to the bottom of the racetrack for everybody. A little bit of a hiccup down in the back. I see him fanning out 3 wide. I think someone got a little bit loose coming off of 3 and 4. That may have been our lap car of Garrett Mashburn in the 21. I saw get that little bit of an issue back there, but looks like everything's pretty much fanning out normally, as everyone is, as you're right, Evan, I think just trying to start looking for openings to get down to the bottom so that people can hit pit road.
Those 3 cars, the 19, the 7, and the 29, are the only ones still sticking together. The 7 and Angel DeYoung's fallen back a little bit, and he's kind of just hanging on alongside the 60 to Bergeron just by side draft alone. Didn't really have any help out of the front to the back end, and that's about it for the drivers up on the outside of the racetrack. It's, a group that got some decent momentum going, but I just feel like not the right time to get it done. And now you see on the inside of the racetrack, more drivers tucking back in line as we're in lap number 32 from Daytona. You have to ask yourself, if you're the 19 car, what do you do? Samuel Harris, race high, P5. So they are making a last stand here up on the outside, but I just don't see them having enough time to properly set this up. Once you start to rush yourself at Daytona, especially at a race this long where we've been preaching, take it easy, take it slow, and work through these 200 laps. You never want to put yourself in a stressful position early like this, boxed out from the rest of the field.
Yeah, that's really the big thing. You don't want to have anything or anyone be pushing you too much just right here, right now, and you don't want to be feeling pressured trying to get down to that bottom side of the racetrack as they work themselves to the tri-oval for the 32nd time, beginning lap number 33 in this one. Still have those few cars up along the top, the 19 and the 29 and the 17, just holding strong here on the outside, but as we all know, these guys are going to be having to drop down to the bottom here relatively shortly in order for them to be able to get down there and, well, get down towards pit road, because we're starting to get to the end of this fuel run here in just a few moments. Is working lap number 33. I think usually the number we can come to expect is about 45 to 50 if memory serves right.
We will see if we get to that point. If we stick with that number, it is going to be interesting because obviously if we are able to stay green throughout this race, you would want to be able to stretch it to lap 50, make it on 3 different stops over the course of the race at quarter, half, and 3/4 distance, but life doesn't tend to line up just that perfectly, and we might end up in a position where you are going to need 1 additional stop at some point, and if it is just 5-10 laps short on fuel in the grand scheme of things, that leaves the door wide open. It's not like it's clear cut, all right, everybody's going to need to get fuel to go X amount of laps. There's a lot of variance that can take place. Drivers taking a short pit early or even taking a short pit at the end, only a splash and go as they try to minimize the amount of time that they spend on the pit lane. But so far so good. You're seeing side by side action sustained inside of the top 15, top 20 from Daytona without incident now, lap number 34. And again, Jimmy Mullis has still led all the way. That 3 car on the inside of the racetrack, Zach Novak, as the one had a little bit of a bobble. No intentions of forcing the issue, just say tucked in line behind him. I think everybody on the inside for the first couple of spots pretty happy with where they are, with no reason to jeopardize that position to maybe try to make a play to the outside. I think everybody's comfortable at the moment.
Everyone just being nice, calm, cool, and collected. There's still 3 cars up there being as strong as they can. And we do have that little bit of second pack in the back, a little bit of separation deep down this field. Now it's just a waiting game for when people decide to come down on towards pit road. Through corners number 3 and 4, I don't think we're going to have any takers just yet, as they're all going to go right past that opening to pit road and through the tri-oval once more as they work themselves down in towards corners number 1 and 2 again.
And there is going to be some variance. It's not impossible, but I wouldn't expect all of the 32 cars who run on the lead lap at the moment and within 3.4 seconds of each other, mind you. So this is still very much one lead pack. We really haven't seen a group of 5 or 6 fall out the back end much at all. There is a little bit of a distance between 27th Pataska and 28th Marcus Lindsay. Other than that, though, that group is still 6 cars tucked in line single file and right off the back end. Should also note, we told you that we saw Mashburn and Johnson fall a lap down. They are still the only 2 drivers 1 lap down, but Matt Adams has dropped out of this race. The driver who started in 30th position no longer in this one. He's had to park that car, and his night is done. So we do have the first retiree early in this Daytona 500. Everybody else continues to work on the high banks. Lap number 37. We head down the super stretch again. You also see with the 19 of Samuel Harris, topside 17 machine of Graham Bolin, and the 29 car of Richard Holiday. They are really the only driver still up on the outside of the racetrack. Take a look at the pit lane again this time. No tankers inside of the lead pack. Those guys, again, not that they can't get down to the pit lane from where they sit, but it would involve coming across the lane of traffic. It would take a lot of coordination with the folks around them. When are you going to be coming down pit road? And especially for those who are trying to protect their strategy, a lot of guys not just going to come over the radio and say, hey, I'm pitting this lap. A lot of people chatting outside of the sim itself. A lot of people on the radio just with a couple of guys trying to coordinate things. I would argue that at Daytona, aside from, the first 5 to 10 laps off of a restart, green flag pit stops is one of the most treacherous times as the 17 sees his opportunity and takes it. Bolin drops outside to the bottom, and that's a nice move. He ends up going 18th to 8th using the outside, and he has found a spot in line, I think, just in a nick of time. But green flag pit stops at Daytona are so difficult. You're talking about guys coming off the turn number 4, close to 200 miles an hour. And of course, you've got to slow that thing down to pit road speed, which is 60 miles an hour. But that's not even the most difficult part. You put one car out there, you could probably get yourself down to 60 miles an hour without incident more times than not. Obviously, you don't have to brake right off of the corner. You can stretch it for about 2 to 3 more seconds and then get hard on the brakes. And depending on how hard you're willing to push it and how close you get to that line without stepping over it, you can save time on pit stops. But the biggest problem is, without doubt, the fact that you're pitted with about 20 other cars every single time you head down to the pit lane. A lot of people take different entries into pit road. Pit road itself is going to be crowded, getting into and out of the boxes. And of course, it's almost bad to get a really quick pit stop, but of course it's bad to get a slow pit stop. You want to come in and you want to leave pit road with as many cars as you can. Individual speed is by far outweighed by the speed of the draft here at Daytona. And right there you see the 19 machine also going to make that move and jumping ship. Samuel Harris tucks down line. And we've got drivers headed to pit lane. The number 31 car is coming down. He may be the only one in now. 2 cars down. Nick Krischke and Corey Brown. 31 spins it onto the pit lane. He's going to hang on to it, but 2 cars come down. They're not going to have a lot of speed as they leave together, but pit stops finally in the works from Daytona. Those first cars came in at lap 40. Working at turn number 2, so they are obviously going to try to leave pit road together. We saw the near spin from Krischke, who I think is an interesting call, was running inside of the top 5. Fortunately for him, he's going to find himself towards the back. Does this mean that the floodgates are open, though? Everybody's going to be single file this time at quarter number 4. Drivers come down to the pit lane, at least for the drivers up at the front. They say no, we are not ready to commit to coming down pit lane for service. So we still wait for the big flood of drivers to come down pit road. Did see groups at the back, obviously. Logan Powers, Malik Ray, Michael Guest. You've also got Brian Wayant, Everett Lane, Mike Bruno coming down pit road. That might have been that group that was about 7/10 off at the very back. But I think that this lead group is going to come in at some point here. They do it all at once. Obviously going to be pretty hectic down onto the pit lane. It's also going to be a good idea of what these drivers want to do tire-wise. Daytona, not a racetrack that necessarily lends itself to eating away at Goodyear rubber, but as you see drivers come down, here we go with the top 2 coming down pit road. The 3 are really coming in hard, and I think Zach Novak wound her up in time, but you saw him smoke those tires all the way in, and he actually leapfrogs in front of the one of Jimmy Mullis onto the pit lane. Now, if he's able to continue that and be able to get off of pit road in first as well. Very timid entry. But the number 3 car, as he comes into pit lane, looks like he's going to go with right side tires. And all is going to be for 4 tires for Zach Novak. So he wants 4 fresh ones. It'll be fuel for him and out. And it looks like for the 3 car is Zach Novak, he will be first driver out of pit road. Now the 14 is going to be able to leapfrog in front of him. Will Cooley going to be the first driver in and out. He did start a little bit deeper back with the pit stall after qualifying in 7th. However, for him, all works out relatively well. He was able to win that race off of pit road. There was a spinner towards the back of the pack there. When we came down pit road, a couple of drivers didn't line themselves quite up, and that goes back into what we were talking about with folks not being able to get in and out of pit lane. It was Marcus Lindsay who just completely missed the brakes, came in way too hot. And the 7, unfortunately, was up against the inside of the racetrack. He got tagged, and so did the 20 car, well, who got a piece of that. That was, of course, the 20 machine, or the 28 machine, who got spun around. Nothing you could really do to avoid that one. So Marcus Lindsay, I talked about how you don't have to get right on the brakes. You can push it a little bit extra. That's what you call pushing it far too much. Racetrack got blocked. Looked like the 27 and the 18 machine as well had to come to a stop. So that is what you call a missed entry for Marcus Lindsay. And that might end his night because he's been in the box for a good little bit now trying to get it fixed. All of that, all of a sudden, everybody completing pit service. And you look at the race leaders up on the outside. There's the 14 car with all the momentum, and that group is going to end up back at the race lead. The group here, Casey Kerwood, Blake Bryant, and everybody else, they pitted the last time by. Didn't pit with everybody the first time. The call was the same. They wanted 4 tires, and they actually beat that group off of pit road. But again, individual speed far outweighed by the group speed and the speed of the pack here from Daytona. And you could see that car, that group of cars, I guess I should say, Cooley, Novak, Harris, and Mullis working up on the outside of the racetrack. They had already gotten themselves up to speed by about a lap or so, and no surprise that they have worked themselves to the race lead. And now that at about a 2 to 3 lap span, we have worked all the way through our green flag pit stops, I guess you should say. Now you have to kind of assess the damage. We came down pit road with essentially every single car on the lead lap working in the lead pack. Now, Well, it looks like we have a little bit of a top 6 breakaway or so. It's Cooley, Novak, Harris, Mullis, Bolin, and Alex Bergeron leading the way from Daytona. As we work on lap number 46 under green flag conditions, we'll take a quick opportunity to step aside, and when we come back, we'll watch the 14 Will Cooley. He's leading his first laps of the morning. You're watching the 2018 iRacing Daytona 500 on RaceSpot TV and iRacing Live. We'll be back to Daytona Beach in just a moment.
Just like a movie, just like a storybook, we are the future, we're the ones they won't overlook. It's time to be the hero. Rising like you've never seen, like you've never seen. Looking for a hero. Shining just like in a dream, just like in a dream.
When I sat in the car, you always wonder, what's it going to feel like? It was my first time driving a mid-engine GT car. My thoughts were, wow, this is really good for our first time in a car. I was really surprised by it. You're sitting low, you got the A-pillars at steep angles, the windshields at steep angles, you can see the fender flares. I think we have a chance to win. Everything's got to go right, but I think we have a car that can win the race or be on the podium. But can you imagine how cool that would be to go back 50 years later to the year and do it?
Back live from the Daytona International Speedway, still working under green flag conditions. Here from Daytona Beach, race leader Will Cooley up in front. It had been up until the caution, or the green flag pit stop, should be Mullis, I should say, had led every lap up until that point, and he did get in and out of pit road easily, but it was the 14 of Will Cooley just better off. You think that at the end of the pit lane, and it's something that we always talk about, Randy, deeper into the pit road you start, the worse it off is for you. Obviously, you want to start first and second to get those first few pit stalls. That's good for a race off a pit road under yellow. If it came off a pit road under caution flag conditions, well, it would be Jimmy Mullis leading this race. But the 14, a couple of pit stalls back, was already at pit road exit speed at 60 miles an hour with able to start kind of burning rubber and getting out. He was able to pull up along the outside, and I think, again, with another long run in and green flag pit stop still due up before we even get halfway, should be in a comfortable position to get a good amount of laps led here on this run now.
Yeah, just a good move there from Will Cooley, wasn't it, to take this race lead? And that's one of the things about this racetrack people always talk about, the fact that, well, a lot of people like to talk about how easy it is here at Daytona, and you don't get a lot of mistakes that often crop up, but when they happen, you need to take advantage of them and jump into that race lead when you get the opportunity. So because of that, 14 car shifts his way into the race lead with Zach Novak taking the second spot. Sam Harris, we saw working the top at one point today, running in third, and Jimmy Mullis, who from your race lead led every single lap up until that point, he now finds himself running in that fourth spot.
It was still, again, not a terrible position. I mentioned on that first run that I thought that, even for the likes of the guys tucked in line behind him, the Casey Collins of the world, the Zach Novaks, that they weren't necessarily going to jump on a first run to the outside of the racetrack at lap number 30 of 200, because being inside of the top 5, but nonetheless just the top 10 on the inside of the racetrack early is a pretty good position. I don't know if Mullis buys into that at the moment. I think he wants to get back up front and lead the most laps once more, as he was sticking a nose to the outside of the racetrack and getting some fresh and clean air with the nose of that Toyota Camry. But for everybody else, again, no real hurry to get on by him. So I think in this case, as Will Cooley has now assumed the number 1 position, I don't see Zach Novak just going to the outside of the racetrack and try to make a move. He at a 19 plotting against the 14, because you go to the outside. Well, we saw somebody drop back over 20 positions by being up at the outside at the very start of the race. We've seen that outside line have some success. Some drivers have definitely worked it and used it to their advantage. Samuel Harris in a 19 machine is one of them, who runs in 3rd position. I just see it as an unneeded risk, a gamble that you don't need to take just past quarter distance.
Yeah, I can agree with that. It's, we're just, lap 54 of 200 here as they work themselves through the high banks of 1 and 2 and start to head back down at this super stretch. I pretty much agree with you 100% that no real point in getting things overly aggressive here, as you see everyone pretty much single file in this lead pack, as we have a second group that's, well, about 6 seconds back, that's starting with that 8 machine of Chris Shearburn. And that's one thing that's interesting there, Evan. That car, we saw him come down on pit road so early on in this one. I believe he now, no, that's not who I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of Mashburn here, as I'm getting my names mixed up.
2 cars way up on the outside. That's Casey Kerwin leading the outside charge, and you do have a little bit of separation here. Again, when we came off of pit road, we weren't all into one group. The draft naturally works its magic, and we've got about now 16 cars grouped together. The 2 car thinking about going down, and the 24 right there, Robbie Roy actually checked up, let him in line. I thought the 2 was going to be very aggressive to go topside. Things were a little bit discombobulated there in the middle of the top 10, and I thought he was going to use that to his advantage. He went low, wasn't quite clear, but Roy checked up, let him in line, and just like that, Kerwin back down low, trying to get back up into the top 5 where he started this race. And the 16 car actually went to the outside, so Alex Bergeron now leads the outside charge with the 9 and the 11 in tow. And as I say that, Willie Gray slices down to the inside and tucks in line behind the 5 of Mallet.
It's a little bit of slicing and dicing back here. They work themselves through 1 and 2 once again, and everyone trying their hardest to get themselves back down in line and just get a nice, cool, calm, and collected. And it's been a really calm race, hasn't it, Evan? 56 laps in. Not often you see green flag runs that go for this long, and I've been saying it since the drop of the green flag. I think it's going to stay like this for a while, as the cars pretty much are single file once again through 3 and 4 here on the high banks of Daytona. I think we could go much well past half distance under green flag conditions if people keep doing what they're doing. That's always a good thing to see.
If we're able to maintain pace as far as what we've seen so far and be able to get the same fuel mileage out of these cars, you're looking at a 4-spot race over the course of the night. We'll be able to get just into the 40s, but nobody able to challenge it towards the 50 mark. Without, of course, a couple of yellows, that number seems far out of reach, and even at this point, if you were able to get some yellows and help you out, you're already about 7-8 laps behind on that strategy, so it looks like just cut your losses and take the strategy that I think everybody came into this race prepared to run, and that would be 4 stops until the end of the race. So this is 57 in the works of 200 at the moment. The first big gap we see, though, and should note that in this lead group of the top 16, the only car now on the outside of the racetrack is Alex Bergeron. He was not forced up there. He made a decision. We saw that, the entry tucking line behind him, but that Tua Kerwin, his driver, I'm thinking of, kind of forced his way through. Bergeron was in front of Kerwin. Right now runs in P6. He decided, go to the outside, take that spot that was left by the 2, lead the outside. Well, in the coming laps, those guys behind him left him. So Bergeron, missed call, dropping back on the outside of the racetrack. He's going to get some help It looks like Richard Holiday and the 34 of Joe Thompson joining him, but that's it out of the top guys. And we got two pieces of lap traffic, one on the inside, one on the outside. With the 28 and the 27, we might end up 4 wide. Not a good place to be in. It looks like the 4 car can't get by. The 27 not being helpful and not going to give those guys any room to get on by. The 4 machine Ryan Lowe has to check up and allow Brendan Kohler to force his way into the middle of the lead pack.
Yeah, that's just not good awareness by those lap cars. The one going to the top side, I think, had the right idea, but whoever that was trying to just force themselves and say, you know what, I am not going to come off the bottom. If we would have gotten yellow, it'd have to be on that driver. You know, there's no other way to put it than to say that that's on you 100%. And all those drivers did a fantastic job avoiding those guys, and there's a lot of scrambling for position there and getting themselves back down to the yellow line as we stay green here as we run lap number 60 of 200.
That little bit of gets your heart rate going a little bit for the guys up front. And so for Kohler, I think it's a little bit of, I think he kind of meant to stay on the inside. Again, we talk about guys trying to blend in with the pack. He is the first driver 1 lap down. I think the biggest thing that's going to work against him, though, is he's got some pretty significant damage after that issue that we saw with the guys coming onto pit lane from that lead group. Aside from that, I think he probably would have been able to blend in. I think the damage, though, is just hurting him too much. And again, if this race stays green, unless you're willing to give up a handful of laps to actually get that car fixed, it is going to be a painful time out on track. Just because you're about, and he's working right now with the 28, Kohler's about 5 miles an hour off pace in the draft at worst. The 28 helps him out. They're not doing 197, but that's still 3 miles an hour off pace. That's almost more agonizing than being 20 miles an hour off pace, because you're so close, you just need that little bit more, and the car just can't do it with the damage that's on board. And a tough break for him. Obviously, he got caught up in somebody else's mess and really puts him in a bad position, as we now have a total of 4 drivers still in this race that are off for the lead lap. Should also note that, as we said earlier, Matt Adams had retired from this race. Marcus Lindsay has also parked that car behind the wall after causing the contact coming on the pit road.
So not a lot of people getting dropped out of this one. 3 cars that are also scored 1 lap down. Brandon Kohler, Manuel Sanchez, Garrett Mashburn, and Dustin Johnson, those 4 drivers. So they're still technically in this thing, as we're not even yet halfway, only 1 lap down with what we have with the system here on iRacing. You can get those laps back if some cautions end up cropping up. Just need to make sure you're not involved with them, as still to be 62 laps in and only have 2 drivers involved in incidents and have those incidents basically come down on pit road is always a good thing. As they run through 3 and 4 once again, everyone's still staying single file as we're starting to near the end of this second little run here, Evan, of green flag racing. Been green all the way through. First pit stops came around in the mid 40s and puts us about 20 or so laps out from the next round of stops.
I'm just looking back for this second pack because it's really a big difference now. Again, off of pit road, 6/10 to a group and then a second or 2 here. But this lead pack that we're starting to see some more side by side out of, and they've got about 20 laps before they have to worry about coming back down to the pit lane. So I think this one is a little bit legitimate charge. But the difference between 16th and 17th is nearly 6.2 seconds between Joe Thompson and Chris Sherburne. That is a big difference. And I guess in theory, if you can lose 6 seconds on the cycle to pit stops, you could gain those 6 seconds back, but it is going to be very difficult to do so for that single file pack that runs a little bit deeper on through the field. You see that 1 car going up to the outside? Jimmy Mullis now wants to go up top. The 19 is thinking about it. The 1 going up does not surprise me at all. He's been looking top 5, almost top 5 for the first time tonight.
Some people get into some of these full-length races, Evan, and they might only get 1 opportunity to win the one, whether it be the iRacing Daytona 500 like it is today, or one of the endurance races that we have on the World Tour over the course of the season, or maybe it's the iRacing Indy 500. Some people will only get 1 opportunity to win one of those big races. So for him to make it 3 this week, he'd love to make it 4 in a row in this big broadcasted race. And for that number 9, Michael Guess, he's had a lot of momentum on race spot in the last handful of months. Been seeing him in, of course, his Red Bull Global Rallycross cars and seen him in the dirt side as well in the likes of the super late model. I don't think we've seen him in that wing sprint car though, but Michael's turned into one of the more strong drivers. Also saw him in that Joe Gibbs offseason action series as well. Been one of the strongest drivers on the sim the last 30 to 60 days, especially on the oval side. And he's going to be, I think, a force to be reckoned with this season once we get to that NASCAR Peak antifreeze iRacing series here in just a couple days' time.
And that's the best way to obviously stay up with it and don't get rusty at all over the course of an off season, is to race it as many different things as you can. And obviously with the strength of field with everybody in this, the top split race being way up there, you're definitely challenging yourself as Guess has been able to work to the inside. And again, I think he buys into the logic that if I'm fourth on the inside of the racetrack, I'm in a good spot. Jimmy Mullis wants to lead this race. We have yet to see a pass for the race lead, aside from when we came down pit road. Of course, we saw the race lead get exchanged a couple of times there, but under green flag in regular racing conditions, it had been on that first stint old Jimmy Mullis. And since the pit stops, all Will Cooley of the one car has put up a formidable challenge. The push coming from the two of Casey Kerwin. The 29 of Richard Holiday was the first driver to step out of line way back in 16th. To go to the outside of the racetrack to get this outside line going. He's right there in third, and the one car will get it. Race change. It is Jimmy Mullis outside of the racetrack, but he was able to go up there and do exactly what he wanted. Had no loyalties, to the two of Casey Kerwin, who he just kind of left. Oftentimes you'll see if somebody's really working with somebody, they'll stay up top, not tuck right down and try to bring their person with them or whatever, but for the one mission to do, Mullis, he got done what he needed to do, and that was tuck down line to the inside, get on that double yellow line, and just like that, he found himself back into the race lead from Daytona International Speedway. So the two-car at Kerwin, 29 of Ishida Holiday, 2 versus 3 cars on the outside is not a huge difference. 29 just can't get to that 2 machine, and well, as we've seen Mullis go to the race lead, the outside has now fallen apart. Leaves the room for somebody new to jump into this. The 19 of Samuel Harris is testing the waters. He looks up to the outside of the racetrack to see if he could get anybody to come. It looked like that 9 of Michael Guest was going to go up and follow him, but wanted to see if that's going to stick, and the 19 continues to think about it. The 9 says, let's go. He keeps sticking his nose out to the right-hand side, so Michael Guest wants to get going and go to the outside of the racetrack, and 19 for the time being is going to decide to stay tucked in line, so Harris will maintain 4th position on track. Unchallenged race lead up front. Right when that one car got to the race lead, he had a small window of opportunity to try to make a move and get right back around him for the 14. Mullis made the move, and the 14 could have gone to the outside of the racetrack and maybe tried to use the push from the 2 to get right back around the 1. It wouldn't have been a terrible idea because you're taking a car away from the 1. Essentially, Mullis would have come back to the 3. The 14 would have got a push, and we could have put up a pretty honest fight. But again, I just don't see the 14, his mentality, being that way. Second position at lap number 71 is a perfectly competitive position. Now, we're talking about lap 170. 14 machine's probably going to make that move because at that point we should be done with pit stops, and you're talking about positioning yourself to be in the best position to challenge for the race win. But at this point, you're not funning to win the race, you're just trying to keep yourself in it. In this lead path, it sits 16 cars strong, as now once again going single file. It's a bit of a gap now, but catch it up to lap cars. We'll see how this is a factor with Tony Reposard, Dustin Johnson, and Powers. The drivers running in 28th, 29th, the lap car for Johnson in 32nd position. So we will then go down to a total of 27 drivers on the lead lap. 18 and the 30 got up and out of the way. The 22 machine on the inside didn't seem too inclined to get out of the way. Powers going to hold his ground on the inside of the racetrack, and again, he's very much doing that because he wants to try to blend in with this lead pack, and not inside the pack at a very minimum, just stuck in line behind them. Try to obviously maintain that first car one lap down position. Drivers have tried to do, I guess I should say, most with relatively minimum success. Down to the double yellow line. We'll file this one out once more. Not all that far, though, from pit stops. All of a sudden, you get caught up in all of the side-by-side action, and as we get back one in a row, 10 laps away from pit lane opening, as we get into the 80s here from Daytona International Speedway. You expect drivers to try to come down to the pit lane what would be a second of 4 times. And again, if you're just getting up with us, still caution-free in the final of the iRacing Daytona 500s for 2018. We've already seen Michael Guest win 2 of them over the course of the week, and the other one going to Pierre Vernet. One race had 9 yellows at the top split level. The last race had only 1. No real way to predict how this race will go, but it has been a good start. And I think that, not that these guys never don't know what they're doing, but oftentimes you can get in a big race like this, and especially the last one. You go and you look at those first couple of races as your most strategic opportunity. You know, hey, if it doesn't work out, to have a backup. So you try to put down a solid strategic run. For those who, compete in a couple of these top split events, and I'm sure we'll be competing in many more of the iRacing special events outside of this Daytona 500 over the course of the year, some of the Ronin and Enduro stuff, and of course, some stuff on the ovals later on this year as well. But all that considered, this last race is, well, your last chance to fight for a win in the iRacing Daytona 500. So if you tried to play the strategy clean, you took it easy, you worked with teammates, you hit your fuel numbers, and just tried to keep the car in one piece, and who knows, maybe you got the 10th place result out of it, or you ended up at a wreck and it's somebody else's mess. Either way, you come into this race with nothing to lose, and I think at some point, Randy, we are going to see the flip get switched. Now, on paper, wait till the final 20 laps, then let's go racing. So far, so good, but I think that the folks, if you're not into the top 10, especially if you're outside of this lead group right now, if you're 17th, you're 8.6 seconds back for the race leaders. You have to, I think, start to be panicking already, and we're not even halfway home, so that's not good.
I totally agree with that. I think you have to get to a point where you start really pushing, and especially like you said, if you're not in one of that lead pack, if you're one of the top 16 cars are all separated by 1.6 seconds. That's that one big long train of cars you see on your cameras right now. We go back another 7 seconds on the racetrack. This is a decently quick group of cars that just didn't have a good run on pit road. You're talking Chris Shearburn, Brian Winnett, Mike Bruno, Glenn Murphy Jr., Brian Coppinger, Dallas Pisaka, Corey Brown. Those are the cars in this little second pack, still basically matching the same lap times as this lead group, but made some mistake somehow, some way on pit road, and because of that, they dropped in their own little bubble this little ways down the order. You basically, I think, need to hope for a caution at some point. So I think if things start getting racy, I might come from that second pack as they start trying to push each other really, really hard to reel that gap down and in.
But as you see and you look at that pack, you saw those 7 cars in line, as you mentioned them. Single file's the best way to make speed around here, so you would have thought when the race leaders went side by side that second pack would have been working together and they would have been able to make up time. The only thing they can do is get single file and try to make up time, but they have only lost time. That's because the lead group is 16 cars and they are a group of 7 cars. The math just does not work in their favor. And it's not like you can, get anybody else to hop in with them. The next group of the lead lap is the final group of cars in the lead lap, 24th through 27th. And they're another 20 seconds back, 25 off for the race lead for Schaefer, DeYoung, Krischke, and, for Mickelborg. And so those drivers aren't going to help you out. You're just in a bad spot. Again, all you can do is come down pit road, execute cleanly in and out, and hope that, a couple more drivers up towards the front. Maybe you get disconnected from the lead pack. They come back to you. Maybe then you have an advantage in the numbers, because when we first came down pit road, all 27 of these cars were in one big pack. Since then, they've been split up into 3, and I can only imagine every time we come down pit road, we'll split them up a little bit more each time.
I think that's basically going to be the name of the game here today. Every single time people make trips down on towards pit road, every single one of these plate races you see, there'll be the handful of guys that for one reason or another, maybe they didn't do enough practice getting down towards pit road, or who knows what the deal really is at the end of the day, but they just struggle getting down there, and they drop a lot of time compared to some other guys once they actually drop down there, and we're only about 5 or 6 laps out from that. A little bit of slicing dice in here, I think, from Casey Kerwin with that black number. I think it's the number 1 car just in front of it. No, maybe the 11, or no, it's the 17 of Graham Boland, and a little bit of swapping of positions there, I think, for some reason, as one car darts way up to the high side of the racetrack. So a lot of swerving coming from this lead group, and people ducking out of line, maybe trying to get clean air in. Not quite sure, Evan, but I think people trying to think about make that top line work. Got one driver who ducks out, actually sort of baits the two machine of Casey Kerwin and ducks right back down in line. And now Casey's sort of just kind of stuck out there with nowhere to really go, as he's going to try to get back down and in line.
When you can see the 11 continues to go up high, then on in front of him, Michael Guest as well. And Kerwin trying to get around the 17. I don't think that Graham Boland there is as much of a willing participant in that, shenanigans going on up top than everybody around him. As we've seen Kerwin be very aggressive. Started fourth. He's back at probably the lowest he's been all night, aside from maybe a rough tick on the scoring pylon because they pitted it in the first of the two groups. But, he's been very aggressive. He pushed to the race lead, but he got that one machine back up there, so he's somebody that's ready to go. He just needs somebody to go with, and he's kind of stuck behind somebody who's very much content with where they're running. Not helping the 2 car out much. If the 9 and the 11 go, the 2 wants to be there, and the 17 now on board. Now you might have something brewing. 4 cars to the outside, but they go way up top and nothing happens. You see the 2 try to come back down. The 7's right there with him. So I think they want to get something going. They're just struggling at the moment because they're really spaced out at the moment. They're tightening things up, then make a move to the outside as that 9 gets closer to the 19 in front of him. And you want to talk about how important the draft is. Look at the 11 car, Malik Ray, all the way up, tucks up on the back of the 28 to get that little bit extra draft off of the lap car, Sanchez, who falls 2 laps down.
Yeah, not sure what exactly Malik was thinking there. He sort of ducked up behind that lap car and immediately got back in line. I don't know if he was thinking he could use that car to sort of stir that top groove. I'm not really sure, as we're getting just a few laps away here, I think, from these pit stops. Lap 43, 44 for the most, as we currently work lap number 82. So just a couple laps away. It's really weird to see people get this dicey here, Evan, this close to the green flag pit stops, considering they've just spent the last 40 some odd laps pretty much just calm, cool, and rolling single file when they can, and just not really doing any of this. So doesn't really make much sense to me why people will suddenly get so aggressive from that bottom groove and start swerving up and ducking right back down on the bottom, or sending 3 or 4 guys up to the top and then immediately dropping back in. I don't know if they're getting bored or what the deal is, but regardless, they get themselves back single file and likely talking to their crew chief, starting to think about when they're going to hit pit lane.
We're inside of lap number 80, of course, just to be able to make it to the end on the strategy you're looking at. You only have to be able to make it 40 laps per. You can bid at 40, 80, 120, and 160. As we mentioned earlier on, if you can stretch a little bit extra, get 4 or 5 laps here, 4 or 5 laps there, you're not going to be able to completely negate that final pit stop entirely. You're going to be able to work it down to a shorter distance. Drivers coming in. Michael Guest first off for the inside. 9 car really tight on speed. So Michael Guest is in. Malik Ray, the 17 to Graham Boland in as well. Good number of cars, but the guys up front stayed out.
Yeah, so it's basically I'd say about a third of that lead group just came down on towards pit road, as the rest of that group starts to lead out there, as we still have, because of that, 4 cars out in front now have themselves a nice little breakaway. Have the 1, the 14, I believe the 31, and then, the 3 and the 19. Those 4 cars all got themselves. Mullis, Cooley, Novak, and Harris now have their own nice little island, and now they can pretty much choose nice and easily. Are they going to come down pit road? Here comes 3, in fact all 4. I think Will Cooley was thinking about staying out for a moment, but saw that all those drivers around him were coming on towards pit road, as well as a number of others in the background, so they're going to opt to stay out. And now it's going to be the 2 machine of Casey Kerwin who leads the lap under green flag conditions here at Daytona, and him and now 4 other drivers behind him, 24-5, the 4, and the 15. They're going to be your lead pack for now as they head down the super stretch.
And we should see now if this strategy works out for this group this time around. It did not last time. Now, they didn't end up in the group 25 seconds back, so I guess you could say it did in a way. But they were able to stick out onto the racetrack together, so in theory, you're keeping your momentum up. But you need to be very quick in and out, and they cannot afford any sort of a blunder when they leave pit road together. They will stay hooked up for the moment, and it'll still be the number 2 with Kerwin out front from Daytona. The problem is last time when they pitted a lap later than the bulk of the field did, they got back out on the racetrack first, but they had less cars and they weren't up to speed yet. They eventually got past And that's how we saw the race lead change. They're kind of hopping onto the back of a group right here. These cars, 16th position, are at the very back of the lead lap at the moment. They're trying to get a little bit of speed off of them. I'm not sure this is going to work out for them, though, because these guys are having the same problem I was just describing from them. They're not completely up to speed yet. These guys need to come down pit road sooner than later. But right there, you see Kerwin, he's checking up. This is going to hurt them. They would have been much better off to pit last time as if they caught this lap traffic. I don't think they were expecting that.
Yeah, I think you're right. As you get to see that two machine lock it up and he gets it down onto pit road. Does a good job, though, as that little quartet's going to get into the box. And now let's see who's going to actually be leading this. The 4 of Ryan Lowe is currently the race leader, and I think he's the only driver we've not seen come down towards pit road for the most part. As he works, well, I think there's a couple other drivers in this group. Live timing hasn't quite updated just yet. 14 of Will Cooley is not very far off the back of this, and he was leading this at one point and in that lead group, so he's someone to sort of keep an eye on. As you have the 4 out there who's currently leading, and the next in line for timing for me told me it was the 2 machine. 24's on pit road, so I think it might just be Ryan Lowe who we're waiting on, and he's solo coming onto pit road right now.
That's not a good idea if you want to come in by yourself. Again, you might luck out, find some friends, but we'll see how it works for Ryan Lowe. He does get a lap led, though. So again, we add to the group of lap leaders. I think that might be the 5th different driver, at least, that we've seen lead a lap so far here today from Daytona. So it's good to see that number go up, courtesy of a little bit of pit strategy. So down the back straight away, the 2 of Casey Kerwin and his group has led, and they're leading this race now. Kerwin, Roy, Mallet, and Bryant. But again, they don't have the speed. This is exactly what we saw after they came down pit lane the first time. See those cars on the outside? They pitted a couple of laps before. They have speed and momentum. And on the outside of the racetrack, Michael Gass is going to blow by that group, courtesy of the 17 and the 11. Bolin and Malik Ray with a push, and now they will go to the front. Of course, Ryan Lowe still technically your race leader. He's all by himself in 1 and 2. We'll see the same thing happen here in a moment.
Jimmy Mullis is trying to do the same thing on that top side, but isn't quite able to get clear of that 2 machine of Casey Kerwin, and because of that, he's going to be struggling there up on that top side. As you see those 3 cars out in front, they end up taking that race lead. So well timed by then, and fantastic job on pit road as Jimmy gets a little bit close trying to make something happen, but not quite able to do it as they work themselves through the top side of 3 and 4, and a little bit of lap traffic. People are going to have to fan up toward the top side. Let's see if we can get it clear once again. I think the 2nd or 3rd time we've seen a lap car pin themselves down to the bottom. At least this time it's just 1 car down to the bottom instead of 1 up top, 1 down low, as they work themselves through the tri-oval and off towards 1 and 2, excuse me, and looks like everyone's going to be through clean. 5 of the 1 almost gets hooked. 1 car of Jimmy Mullis. He sort of gets pushed up into the 3rd lane and nowhere for him really to go right now.
Yeah, the 1 machine's going to slide down in front of the 15 machine, so that gets sorted out, but 16 all by himself, and the 3 doesn't want to play nice either. Looked like that 3 car jumped up. Zach Novak went up to the outside lane, but he didn't really need to, so that the 16 couldn't tuck back in line, and maybe the Novak returns to hop in on that double yellow line. The 16 is now going the wrong direction, as Alex Bergeron is probably going to end up at the back of this single file train. So that worked out just about as we expected it to. But how about Michael Gass? Just, he's been racing up here for a good amount of time now, again, without yellows. And I talked about how qualifying is important here, but it is not the end-all, do-all of plate racing. 28th to 1st and Malik Ray, 29th to 3rd, without a yellow, have been able to get all the way up. And if you look a little bit further back, even Richard Holiday, 34th to 9th. So a good little bit of guys have been able to pick up time. This lead pack sits at 13 cars, so we did lose 3 in that exchange of pit stops. We were 16 before.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that's always going to happen. You're always going to have people, like I said, who struggle on pit road a little bit and end up dropping down. So we still have, I believe it was 16 cars strong once we had that lead pack before we went to pit road. Now we've lost a few of those drivers. Like you said, it's dropped down to 13, and then, well, we have a nice little trio of cars of Will Cooley, Joe Thompson, and Everett F. Lane running 14th, 15th, and 16th out there on the racetrack. So that trio of drivers, and then drop 6 seconds back, you get to like the Shearburn and Wynand and Bruno, Dallas Pasaka, the rest of the field pretty much down there. But for the most part, your lead pack still very, very tight here up at the front of this thing.
And that group lost a little bit more time. If you recall, they were about 6 to 7 seconds off of the race leaders when we pitted. That group is now an overall 10 to 15 seconds. If you look between 17th and 22nd position off for the guys up front, and then Glenn Murphy, Josh Mickelmore, and Nick Krishke to round out everybody inside of the top 25 as we challenge up to the outside of the racetrack. Casey Kirkwood wants to make something happen. But the one car at Jimmy Hull is not interested. Went up top and then took his spot on the inside. And Kerwin gets left out to dry on the laundry line down the Daytona super stretch. We're working lap number 92 of 200 from Daytona International Speedway, and still clean and green in the iRacing Daytona 500. We'll take a quick opportunity to step aside. When we come back, we'll cross halfway and take a look at your iRacing midway race break. You're watching Race Spot TV and iRacing Live's coverage of the iRacing Daytona 500. Back to the world center of racing in a moment.
Kyle Kimball.
Okay, hopefully
We narrowed it down to 4. Those qualifiers were Celine Roland, Tyler Casera, John Allen, and Preston Pardis.
For me, the first session was just, the memorization piece of the track. I probably was halfway through the session before I felt like there were 2 or 3 places I could push. Now I knew what was next. I already see some differences in preference of, how people approach certain turns, or certainly the braking into the first chicane is a little bumpy. So there's a lot to learn, but that's part of the fun.
So as a judge, what we're looking for from these drivers is the opportunity that they take the information that we give them. They can then make themselves a better driver on the racetrack, and then we get to see that instantaneously the next session when we go out there. So we can see whether they can listen to us and comprehend what we're saying, put it into practice, and then see the results.
I'm Jonathan Bomarito. I race the Mazda factory RT24P prototype for Mazda in the IMSA series. We've had 4 really impressive guys here today, all going for a $100,000 scholarship to run in the MX5 Cup series next year.
I'm Preston Pardis. I'm from New Smyrna Beach, Florida. Actually, I've had iRacing since 2010, so I'm a 5-star gold member on the forums. Nothing like hopping on, with a few buddies and do a few sessions, but it's great when you're learning a track. There's nothing like physically driving a racetrack. You can look at video data, but nothing does justice to where you want to really place your car, and it really transfers really well. I think you need to do it nowadays.
Hi, I'm Tyler Casera. I'm an at-large nominee here at the Shootout, Spec Miata racer, and won a couple championships in SCCA and NASA. iRacing is, I think, a huge tool, great tool for me to prepare for race weekends and just hone my craft and stay sharp when I'm not actually at the track.
Hey, my name is Salim Rayan, 9th year Mazda racer. I currently race Spec Miata. Honestly, the first thing I thought of when I got in this car was how similar it is to iRacing.
Took us one final session, but we do have a winner of the $100,000 value scholarship into the 2018 Mazda MX-5 Cup, and that winner is Celine Roland. Congratulations.
It's incredible knowing that now I'm a Mazda factory driver. I work for Mazda, Classic Mazda in Orlando, Florida, and now I'm a Mazda factory driver. It's kind of my life now, even more than it was before. Just a professional race car driver. That's what everyone's dream is, and my dream has become a reality.
One driver of note, John Allen, came here today mainly with an iRacing background, and it was pretty impressive, actually, I must say, how he started off, that he drove 3 sessions.
And as we welcome you back live to the Daytona International Speedway, still green flag conditions in the iRacing Daytona 500. Happy that you're with us on Race Spot TV and iRacing Live. Evan Pasoko Radio Channel series with you in the Race Spot TV booth. Race leader is the Bernard Michael Gass, been able to make that play to the race lead after, of course, the little bit of pit strategy. 2 pit stops so far to this point, and expecting 2 more under the current race pace to be able to get to the end, but we'll be halfway home in a lap and a half from Daytona, in a race that is still without incident. 22 cars scored on the lead lap, 31 still actively on track of the 35 who started this one a little bit over an hour. Actually, they closed it in, I'd say, about an hour and a half ago. Not quite there yet, so good race pace so far, and these guys are back in that single file mind frame. The top 13 cars now have stretched out an additional 6 seconds from the center pack since we stepped aside.
Yeah, so a handful of guys struggling just a little bit, but as they come off corner number 2 and down this long super stretch here at Daytona, they're going to be really happy because we're about to make it half distance, all under green flag racing. Hour and 15 minutes ago is when we went to green, and well, right now having the fastest opportunity to get yourself through this motor race at this situation, and I think everyone wants to sort of do that, Evan, because for at the end of the day, these guys, they don't want to spend 5-6 hours spending a lot of time under yellow. One, because they want to get to the end of this thing. Everyone woke up in the morning early. They don't want to be spending all day on this thing. And second, real race coming here is we're half distance, cross flags as they work themselves into 1 and 2.
As we cross the halfway point in this morning's race, let's take a look at our iRacing midway race break, brought to you by iRacing, the leading online racing simulation developed from the beginning as a centralized racing and competition service. iRacing organizes, hosts, and officiates races on virtual tracks from all around the globe. And in the fast-paced world of esports, iRacing is a one-stop shop for online racing with officially sanctioned series for the likes of NASCAR, IndyCar, IMSA, the World of Outlaws, Global Rallycross, and many more. With now 101 laps complete from Daytona, Michael Guest is your race leader. Just one of many drivers who have been able to put themselves up front, but definitely the driver who has made the most noise, gaining 27 spots en route to doing so. Graham A. Boland runs in the number 2 spot, and Malik Ray's third. All of these drivers have kind of worked together, followed themselves up to the field. You've also got your pole sitter, Jamie Mullis, right there in 4th, and Casey Kerwin in 5th position. It's been a good and quiet night, I would say, for the 50 to Blake Bryan. Hasn't been making a lot of the moves to the outside. He runs comfortably in P6. Robbie Roy runs in 7th position. Patrick Mallett is in 8th, with Ryan Lowe in 9th. And again, one of your biggest movers, up 24 spots for Richard Holiday to round out your top 10.
Looking down a little bit further through the rest of the field, you have Zach Novak running in that 11th spot. Sam Harris is in 12th. Alex Berger on 13th. Will Cooley at one point led this race in the 14 car. He finds himself 14th. Everett F. Lane is in that 15th spot. Joe Thompson 16th. Chris Shearburn in 17th. Brian Wayne in 18th. Mike Bruno 19th. And Dallas Pasaka, he rounds out your top 20.
And continuing on through 21st position is Corey Brown. 22nd is Brandon Coppinger. He's the last driver on the lead lap and will probably lose his lead lap status here sooner rather than later. He is 41.7 seconds off of the guys up front. Then you'll get to the drivers one lap down, and there's a lot of them all the way through 30th position. Includes 23rd, Nigel Young, Nick Krischke in 24th position. Glenn Murphy Jr. is 25th. Josh Mitchell 26th position. Garrett DeMashburn in 27th. Logan DePowers is 28th, with Travis Schaefer 29th, and Tony Repisar to round out your top 30.
And just to round out the field, the people whose race is not going the way they'd like, Dustin Johnson finds himself just a few, Manuel Sanchez, a few laps down in 31st, 21 laps down in 32nd is Dustin Johnson. We got a car around. First yellow here coming off of corner number 4. We have a big pile up here from your lead group.
There's a lot of smoke and a lot of cars, and everybody's going to try to keep this one going, and I think relatively we're going to get away a lot better than it could have been, but a spinner at a turn number 4, and it all started in and around that number 11 car. Nowhere to go. As Malik Ray, I think, was the first driver to go around. We'll get a second look in a moment. He was running in 3rd, and Jimmy Mullis in 4th. The 11 moved up the hill a little bit, came back down across the nose of the 1, and that's a little bit of a gutsy move by the one car at Mullis to not lift at this point in the race, but he made the 11 to pay for it, and Malik Ray goes for a ride at about 5-6 cars total, gets some damage, a lot of them able to go through the front straightaway grass and hang on to it, but that could have been a lot worse.
And we're going to ride on board with Mullis here and see exactly what he saw through corner number 3 and 4. See that 11 machine move up the hill, and he basically just gets it tapped and sent around. So just after we get halfway and run through that mid-race break, we're going to get a reset of the field and be under yellow flag conditions here at Daytona for the first time. So I think a number of drivers likely not going to be too happy with this one, Evan, but what can you do? I think you're right, though. I think if I was Mullis, I likely lift there, but hey, you know what? I'm not in this top split race. Everyone's going to be looking to come down towards pit road.
Drivers headed down pit road, and this is interesting because we've got 95 laps to the end of this race. I think we are just going to be on the outside of a fuel window to be able to make it to the end of this race. Wouldn't be surprised if people are saving and or we see people come in and top off. It is going to be a two-tire call, two-tire call, left sides only for the 9 car Michael Guest. Your race leader again had to stop way early onto pit road, and pit stall number 28, courtesy of where he started, but it'll be easily off of pit road. The lead for him on that two-tire call. Looks like only he and the 17 to Boland go for 2 tires. Most everybody else, I would expect that call to have been 4. And third off in pit lane will be that 3 is Zach Novak, who will be the first driver out. It's 2 tires, but he chose the right sides.
That's a little bit interesting. You're only ever really going to see 2 tires at these big super speedways like Dega and Daytona. Might do one half once you come down one lap, one pit stop, and then do the other sides when you come down again. So big kind of shuffle there, is 11 car really being the big loser and all that. Well, we had a handful of other cars that were really losers, but regardless, it's going to be 90, I think, 3 some odd laps, maybe 94, no, probably 92, 93 laps to go. Once we go back to green flag racing, we still have majority of this field without damage, so very, very competitive group of drivers here as we work the second half of the 2018 iRacing Daytona 500.
Zach Novak winning, the race off of pit road for the guys who are at least in that second group, the guys who had led for the first couple, but the first one in and out is Michael Guest. He is not leading at the moment. That's because we got a lot of guys looking for a wave round. All those drivers 1 lap down, they're going to neglect to pit here and try to get back to the lead lap. So Repizard, Schaefer, Powers, looks like Mashburn is going to decide to come down pit road and give up that opportunity for the free pass. But Sanchez, Mitchell, you got Murphy, Krishke, all these drivers looking to get the wave around and put themselves back on the lead lap. I think it's a good call. You have at least 30 laps still on the fuel you've got on board, and I think that as well, you got it closer to 20 laps, I guess you should say, but you're in a position where I don't think it's a bad idea because we're going to double everybody up. And while I still don't think this is going to be the point where we hit the point to no return and, guys are going to go at it, no holds barred race to the end, it is a restart. And we're going to get a group of guys that have been single file for the better part of these 107 laps to this point, aside from maybe the first 10, 15 laps where we saw a good bit of pack racing up front. They've been single file and trying to buy their time. That group of guys that was 7 seconds back, the group that was 25 seconds back, Randy, they were out of this race without the caution. All of a sudden, you're right back in it. Expect them to be very aggressive to keep themselves up front and in the hunt.
Yeah, that's really the big thing. And right now, just taking a look as we're right on board with Michael Guest, all those cars in front of him are those cars that were scored 1 lap down that will be taking the wave around here. And I have to agree with Evan. You have no other opportunity but to do that right here, right now. So just go ahead, get yourself that lead lap back and try to make something somehow, some way work as you try to work your way forward. And like you said, a handful of drivers that were pretty much out of this thing because they were so far down the order, maybe mistakes on pit road, whatever it might be. It would be very unlikely to go one of these iRacing Daytona 500 races without a caution. Well, any of these big iRacing oval races going caution-free is, well, it's an oddity in and of its own right. So if you're any of those guys, Evan, yeah, you were down the field, may have been nervous, but with 100 laps of racing still left around the time we got that yellow, I think you had to be more than confident that you're going to get at least 1 reset of the field before checkers waved. And I don't think the second half is going to be as clean as the first half. I think we're going to have maybe 2, 3, 4 cautions before we get to the end of this thing.
And that's just the nature of the beast. Cautions breed cautions as the lights go back out on top of the iRacing.com official pace car. And There go the drivers taking the free pass. So the 30, the 35, the 22, the 28, the 26, the 10, the 31, all going to be able to get back to the lead lap. That'll put us with 28 cars on the lead lap, which to be halfway through this race and started with 35 is a pretty good number. I mentioned that Mashburn pitted, so he gives up the opportunity to get the wave around. He could still be the lucky dog if we get another caution. Now he is the first driver one lap down. Only he and Jay Mullis are a lap down. Tough break for the one car who started this race from pole position, and it was at a fantastic spot. Obviously, be involved in that incident, finds himself struggling to maintain top 30 position, and if you fall 2 laps down, that's a much larger hurdle to get over, and of course being in control for the lucky dog. So lights out on top of the pace car. We're going to go back, Reed. Here's how they look up front. Michael Gaston, Graham Boland going to be on the front row, inside and out first and second. Zach Novak at Everett Lane on row number 2. Richard Holiday and Patrick Mallett back on row 3 with Samuel Harris and Ryan Lowe, row 4, and Casey Kerwin and Will Cooley on row number 5. The outside, not very good. On the first green flag, we saw the driver on the outside of the front row fall to 28th position before he was able to find a spot in line. Here's to hoping for Graham Boland at least. Outside's got a little bit more pep in their step this time around. Pace car down. The field going to be in the hands of the number 9 machine, and it's the 9 Toyota of Michael Gass to bring us back to the green flag. And a 17 wasting no time right inside and wants nothing to do with the folks up top.
Patrick Mallett, he immediately jumps down to the bottom as well in that number 5 car from the 6th spot. So everyone just trying to get back down single file like we've been seeing pretty much all day. Still a number of cars up on that top groove, but number of drivers still aggressively getting themselves back down low. And look at that, considering we had 17 cars basically up on that outside row, there's now only 3 as we're midway down this long Daytona back straightaway and in towards 3 and 4. So that's how strong that bottom groove is. Everyone scrambles to get that down there, and most people are successful. Number of guys, though, notably are not.
Side by side, the 3 is trying to make something really out of nothing. Everybody else is jumping ship up top, and we got Zach Novak trying to make a play for the race lead from Daytona on the outside of the racetrack. Now working lap 110 again. There's a big question mark now overhanging if we're going to be able to get to the end of this race now with just one more pit stop. I think we're just outside of that window. Only time will tell. Of course, Randy, if your prediction comes true to get a couple of yellows, that would probably lend itself enough opportunities to save under caution to be able to get to that point. But nothing saying that we can't do exactly what we did at the start of the night, and that is have good, clean, hard racing due to the stage break before we separate ourselves a little bit. It was a 28-car lead pack when we took the green flag moments ago. More or less, still everybody in contact with each other, and I'm surprised how quickly, just like we saw earlier, cars letting outside have fallen off. I thought we would have seen more guys stick it out, but everybody wants to get onto the inside lane and too sharp.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where I think people still want to be patient. 89 laps left in this thing. You still want to be nice, cool, calm, and collected. There's still a lot of racing left going to be in these cars, at least for the next hour, so you don't want to push yourself too hard. But that said, now a lot more things really push. What's the point I'm trying to make? You can't make as many mistakes as you were earlier on in this one, Evan. So we saw a number of people struggle on pit road a few times. Now for this entire group of cars, if just in case it goes green, and there is a real possibility we can go green to the end after that 105 lap run to open things up, likely going to be on pit road at least 2 times before that point, maybe even a third. You do not want to make any mistakes on pit road that cost you any amount of time. You end up losing 5 seconds. If it goes green, that's the end of your day.
Gamble that these guys have obviously decided that you're going to want to take. We'll see how all of this plays out. 28 cars total still scored on the lead lap as we run right now. And if Zach Novak can just stay there, it's not all that bad. But the problem is, it tends to be one or the other. If the outside doesn't work, you're going to go backwards. We did see, though, right before the first set of pit stops, well earlier on into this race, those guys eventually find a spot here, find a spot there, and be able to blend in with the folks on the inside of the racetrack. It is a legitimate incentive for the 5 of Mallett, the 19 machine, of Harris, and of course, that 4 low on the inside. Those 3 cars down low, the guys at top to not let them in. There's no reason, unless you're working with somebody up there, to let them down the line. There's all very capable race car drivers up on the outside of the racetrack. These guys, I think, see this as an opportunity to kind of box them out.
It really is. It is one of those opportunities, Evan, where you can maybe start putting people on the back foot for this run of the checkered flag. And that's really the way I think it starts, because if you're going to run one of these big 500-mile races, be it Daytona, be it Indianapolis, once we go there, once we get to May, maybe even some of the endurance races, you get about this point where you're about 60-65% distance. That's where you start thinking, okay, what can I start doing to really put my competitors on the back foot? And especially here at Daytona, with the way the draft works, the fact that you have this big pack of cars, you suddenly go to a situation of, yeah, you guys who are up top, I'm not going to let you back down in line and get down to the bottom easily. So I'm just going to keep you isolated up there and let you go to the back, and I'm going to let you have to try to figure out how you're going to work your way forward over the next 80-some-odd laps to the finish.
And those 80-some-odd laps are going to be difficult to do again with the fuel they have on board, plus just one additional pit stop. So this has to be going on in the back of their minds. And that might actually, though, keep them preoccupied. If there's an active fuel strategy game in play, maybe drivers spend a little bit more time single file chatting amongst themselves. Of course, a lot of these guys have live spotters, live crew chiefs in this race with them, running over the numbers, letting them know what they can hit, what they need to be doing to be able to get where they need to get on fuel strategy. That element might take away a little bit from the elbows up racing off of a restart here, which could be good in the grand scheme of things as far as trying to make this race go clean to the end. You're taking a look at this still massive lead pack, as we've seen these guys. First time we've had a pack this big since lap number 45. When we completed our first bit of pit service, the lead pack goes all the way back to 24th position. A little bit of a separation. Logan Powers in 25th is about a half second off the car in front of him, but 24 cars up front, only 3 of them on the outside of the racetrack, but they are doing a good job. I don't think they've really gained much, but they haven't lost anything either, sustaining in the top 10 on the top line. For Novak, obviously, it's a combination of things. You got help from the 29, you have help from the 23, but the side draft also has to be a big thing here. And Daytona, in comparison to Talladega, much thinner. I mentioned at the top of the broadcast, 31 degrees of banking and about 3 stories of banking here from Daytona. That's compared to 33 degrees of banking and the nearly 4 stories of banking at Talladega. It widens out the racetrack, and this racetrack doesn't look tight when you get some of the overhead shots and you can see how much space they have. But at 200 miles an hour, it's a lot different, and it really tightens up quick when you get anybody in a 3rd or 4th lane. We had to go 4 wide earlier tonight when we were working around lap cars. We had a lap car outside and a lap car inside, and all of the lead lap cars had to snake their way through 2 wide in between those lanes of corresponding traffic. So where the 3, the 29, and the 23 sit right now, about the middle, it's not that aggressive of a line. They're in a pretty comfortable position. I don't see them going down right onto the door of the guys on that are inside. They're definitely close enough to get that advantage. But I don't think it's to the point, where it's a huge problem for them and they have to get down and enforce the issue. Because even if you're not trying to rub somebody the wrong way, even if that guy steps up on the inside half a foot to a foot, if you're on their door, it's going to end badly. So I think the better idea is for them to run where they sit now, and they've actually picked up about 2 car lengths. Again, you can fluctuate. You move up a little bit on the outside, then you drop back a little bit on the outside. It's tough to say where they will end up. Zach Novak's making a case to make a legitimate push for the race lead here off the corner.
That he is. He's getting a nice little push here off this top groove. We've not seen this top line really work all day, but maybe we'll get an opportunity to work themselves in towards 1 and 2 once again and head down this long Daytona backstretch. So maybe we're starting to see that top line get strong and people really trying things out, Evan. Yeah, you still have over just north of 80 laps to go in this 500-mile race, but this is where you want to sort of start testing the waters and, give a little bit of a half effort of trying to take that race lead up top.
He's got a half a car length clear. We'll see if Novak can clear him. Not going to happen. Drop it back a little. 3 machine, a little bit of a lower line. He's just trying to get some air to the front of that Chevrolet SS. Obviously, at the back of that 3-car train, they've been pushing each other since the start. The guys on the inside are lined up, but not typically as tight together as the folks up on the outside. You just have to be a lot more aggressive on the outside to compensate for that being a longer way around the racetrack. And we haven't seen anybody have any overheating issues so far today. It is relatively mild conditions inside of the sim, 74 degrees, realistic weather conditions, so mirroring exactly what you're seeing in Daytona Beach, Florida on the morning of this Daytona 500 day, 84 degrees down trackside here in the sim as well. Not cool by any means, but definitely some mild conditions as we have a swap out for 4th and 5th position. The 5-car of Patrick Mallett actually goes to the outside just long enough for the 19 to pass him. And all of that, Everett Lane wants to go inside to the bottom. And with that 3rd car falling off to the outside, that could hurt him if nobody replaces that.
Yeah, some people still doing some things trying to get racy. They got 1-lap car going down this long back straightaway. You see him at the end of this long lead group. Then off towards corners number 3 and 4 in just a moment. So lap cars going to become a factor once again here with just under 80 laps to go. And look at the big gap we have, Evan, between the 5 and the 19 down there on the bottom. That's Sam Harris in the 19 and Pat Mallett in the 5. Pat's going to close that gap up, but that was about 6 or 7 car lengths that he had between the two of them.
Yeah, and we just saw that big checkup. Everybody got spread out a little bit. You had a couple of drivers exchange lanes, and in the blink of an eye, that big gap is now gone because those drivers on the outside of the racetrack filled it in. So that outside's been completely eradicated. Drivers are going to move up the hill as they work around the lap machine. That's the 11 of Malik Ray, who for the first time tonight will fall off of the lead lap in 28th position. So Ray's going to drop 1 lap down. Everybody goes right back to the double yellow, and a good job by everybody up front to get single file in anticipation of that lap car coming. And that one was relatively uneventful compared to some of the more hold-your-breath moments we've seen tonight.
Yeah, that it has been, has worked themselves through the zebra stretch once again, and that lead group pretty much gets themselves single file after we saw that upper groove start to really come in. Still see that second Packer car starting to get its way stretched out. I believe that is the 14 who's sort of the last car in line in this little lead pack. Actually, I might be wrong about, not sure. It might be Will Cooley, actually. It is indeed who is the last car in line in that lead group. Then you drop another 4/10 until you get to Mike Bruno. So right now it seems like the top 10 are really the raciest cars in this entire pack right now. Even that second group, we've seen them struggle pretty much all day trying to maintain the with that top 10.
And drivers, I would just say, for as long as this race has been going on now, closing in on an hour and 45 minutes of race time, I haven't heard all that much over the chat inside of the sim, over the open radio chat, where all the drivers can hear, and of course we can listen in as well. I assume a lot of communication going on behind the scenes, talking about the fact that a lot of these guys have people in the sim with them, spotters and crew chiefs, and of course if you're racing with your teammates, you're strategizing and chatting as well. But a little bit of driver chat over the open radio, just the last couple of laps around as the drivers have been talking inside of the top 5. Everett Lane was one of the drivers on the radio running in 4th position. Not giving away any juicy details as to strategy, but I just found it interesting that for as quiet as everybody has been, a little bit of chatter that time as people have single filed out and I think a little bit more comfortable queuing up.
Yeah, that's pretty much the big situation right now. 74 laps to go, and really the big thing now, Evan, is talking about strategy. When do you come down pit road? Because we're at a window now where if you wanted to short pit a little bit, you and if you got a couple of friends out there could come down right here, right now, and you can make it to the end on one stop. Basically, just get to lap 160 and basically cruise your way to the end from there, no matter what. Now, is that a good idea? I'm not really so sure. Could go either way, depending how you think of it.
You are going to have to, and again, the way it sits, one of those is probably going to be shorter. So in theory, you could say you're inside of the window now. We mentioned on that 4-stop strategy, without the yellow, we'd probably see drivers pitting right about now, because you'd go to lap 40, 80, 120, and then 160. That would split your race into fifths, and you'd have 4 pit stops to make it to the end. But because we came down and got fuel and tires, about 93, 94 laps to go in this race under caution, And not sure we can stretch it to that distance. You'd have to be able to go about 46, 47 laps on 2 stints. Not that that's impossible, but we just haven't seen people in a position tonight to have to force it that far, so nobody's gone 46 or 47 laps on a field yet this evening. Green flag conditions going to be difficult to do so, but if you're in a pack, you can save, and it's not impossible, so we will see. But again, nobody has had to do it, so nobody has done it yet.
That said, we do have a number of cars on pit road, likes of Travis Schaefer, I think a couple others as well. He's coming off pit road. The number 28, Emmanuel Sanchez, is rolling off. You also have Tony Repisard and Logan Power. So a number of cars here, Evan, that were sort of at the back of that lead group. They took the opportunity to say, you know what, let's go down on towards pit road and maybe play this little strategy call here and just get things done early. I think they could be in a good opportunity if we get a yellow that comes out fairly quickly after this lead pack pits, because they'll have the opportunity to maybe pick their spots back up and maybe pick up some spots that way. But regardless, it's going to be have to them somehow, some way, coming off the back foot to get their way back up near the front.
I like the call. These guys were a little bit off of the lead group, as you mentioned, couple of seconds disconnected. This puts them kind of back on the strategy that we should have been on without the yellow. Pitting now, they have one pit stop to go to the end of the race. They're going to be able to make it. Obviously, the sacrifice is you're going to be a lap down for quite some time until the rest of the field pits. You're in a spot where if a yellow comes out, you're trapped 1 lap down. You would then have to stay out to be able to get your lead lap status back, which might hurt your overall strategy. And at that point, you might just have to scrap it and kind of play with what is given to you. But it is a strategy call, and keep an eye, 22nd through 29th. Now running 1 lap down based on that call. Group up front led by Michael Gass, still in the number 9 car, no intentions of pitting. You're going to want to stretch it as far as you can, I would think. You know, these drivers, especially when we saw that yellow, going to need to try to get to about lap 155 if you want a realistic shot. 150, 155, I think, is that window that we're going to be looking at. So still plenty of ways away from that. They could be single file, and you know, when we said at the restart, Randy, you said it, I don't think we're going to be able to go green. I was right there with you. Restarts tend to breed cautions, and it tends to get the blood pumping and the racing action up. It almost looks like everybody going single file because maybe everybody's saving fuel. They're only running about 198 going into the corners, which is a little bit off of what we saw earlier.
Yeah, I mean, you're pretty much right. These guys, there's no point to be saving fuel right now. You're not ever going to be saving gas at this stage of the race. 69 laps to go. Yeah, maybe if you're in the back of the field, if you do not have the raw pace to get to the front, win this race, you maybe start trying to Alexander Rossi this and start really saving gas right here, right now. But I think for the most part, if you're in this entire group, you just pedal to the metal. You have an opportunity to win this race on speed. You basically have to take, with lack of a better term, sort of the gamble that either one, you have to have confidence that you're going to get a caution here in the relatively near future between the next 70 laps that we have between now and the checker flag, or you have to basically say, you know what, I am good enough on pit road that if I have to take a splash and dash, I'll be able to beat everyone else around me. So I don't think we're going to have too many people really saving here in this event just yet, but still, there might be a couple way deep down the order who might throw that into their strategy book.
And at this point, I think these guys would have determined what they're going to go with. I don't think it's going to be a constant thing going on. Once they got back under green flag conditions, you get a pretty good look at what your fuel number is going to be. And I think at that point, you've got an idea, okay, we're going to go for the 2-stop. Maybe that last pit stop comes inside of 5 laps to go. It'll be gas only for 3 seconds in and out. We hope that, of course, going for that call as opposed to the short pit from the group we saw earlier, and that would be 2 full-length stops. You hope that that short pit at the very end gives you an edge going into the closing laps. But I think at this point, these drivers know. I don't think it's a constant thing going on in their head. I don't think the gears are still turning. Once you got going to back green, you know your fuel number. If you can't hit it, you've got a pretty good idea of what that call is going to end up being. And I think now you're just trying to find folks who want to make the same call with you and try to stick with those friends, per se. The 19 Samuel Harris sticking a nose out into the wind. Let's look back in line. We really haven't seen any legitimate run up to the outside since we've gone single file. In fact, I think the separation a little bit more car to car than what we saw earlier as well.
Yeah, that's really the big situation, isn't it? It's still a number of things that are happening, but everyone's been nice and calm, because you really think back, Evan, to the situation, what we were having shortly before that caution, and right after we went back to green, we had a lot of people trying to work that top side of the racetrack, trying to make things work. But since we've gotten, we saw those 3 cars out near the front for about the first 10 laps after we went back green, and we ended up dropping those guys back down to the bottom. We haven't really seen anyone try that top groove of the racetrack and not seen that second groove even come in for the last 20 or so laps, so everyone's being really calm.
And that's not typically something that you associate with Daytona International Speedway. And again, 200 laps. Anybody who has raced in one of these iRacing Daytona 500 before, again, this is just the top split of about 7 different races that are going on right now on the iRacing service, and it is the 4th race of the week. So you talk about, probably in the grand scheme of things, we've had in the high 20s to low 30s of these Daytona 500s in this last week. If you've ever raced in it, or even on the league side of things, if you ever raced 200 laps on the iRacing service, you know that it is a long way to go. And the one thing you don't want to do is rack out early. It does hurt if you go 198 laps and get wrecked out and don't make it to the end. But again, the key is being there in those closing laps. And if you put yourself in a dangerous position, most importantly, an avoidable position. And while I do think that that one and only incident, Randy, that we've seen tonight was a racing incident, I still think it was an avoidable incident. And avoiding those situations, by definition, is exactly what you need to do to find success in these races. Kind of recapping where everybody runs as we sit right now. 5 drivers total behind the wall from Daytona. Everybody else still on track, so that means the top 30 drivers are still in this race. The only drivers we've had to park it is Jimmy Mullis in 31st, Dustin Johnson in 32nd, Brendan Kohler 33rd, Marcus Lindsay 34th, and Matt Adams in 35th position. Other than that, everybody else still on track in this one. 21 on the lead lap, 22nd through 29th, 1 lap down. And Manuel Sanchez in 30th position, 3 laps down all by his lonesome. You see the lead lap cars working to the inside of the 30 cars. So it's going to be Tony Reposar. He will go 2 laps down in 29th spot. Visual representation of speed on your own versus speed in the draft as he tries to snake in a line behind the 12. Try to get the draft off of the back of these guys. I'm not sure that's going to work, though. He's got a little bit of damage, which I think is a factor as well. Reposar tried, but unable to snatch onto the back of the lead pack. Maybe he can try the second group now as Coppinger and company comes, but I think that 3's damage is what's hurting him the most.
Yeah, that's really the big situation right now. If you're in that number 3 machine of Zach Novak, a little bit of damage and can make things difficult for you trying to push your way out near the front as everyone just continuing to log laps. Now, the question has to be for these guys, Evan, is what's going to be the counter when they come down pit road? Because he's been seeing about 42, 43 laps, 44 or so on a fuel run. That would put us out to about 146 if these guys push it to the end. If that's the case, we're about 8 laps out from that fuel number being hit. So which of these guys have been maybe saving a little bit of gas, trying to make something happen here over the course of this run? I should take that back. We went back to green on lap 109, so a little bit further out than that. Got my numbers a little bit mixed up. So about 10 laps or so out. What's sort of the fuel number you think, or sort of the number you want to see of these guys who maybe been saving fuel? What lap do you think they need to come down to put them in the back side of maybe being able to make this with a single yellow? I'm thinking about 150, 151.
I think if you're going to get a yellow, you might be able to get away with 150. The problem is, and the timing of that one caution we saw was also at a tricky spot because it was basically in the middle of the fuel run. And at that point, you expect drivers to come down pit road. I'm shocked, though, that nobody stayed out, just stuck with the normal strategy. So that tells me that everybody had a hunch that you could stretch it. If they knew, hey, if we pit now, we're still going to have to pit 2 more times, stay out. You would have been able to go 20 laps. You'd be off cycle, but we've already seen a big group of drivers just make that audible call on their own and go off cycle. Just pit at 120, pit at 160, and you're good to the end. So I have to think at least some people are thinking about that. If you're not going to get a yellow, you're going to have to get the 155, and that is a tall order. You're going to be saving a ton of fuel under green. But if we get a yellow here or there at some point, I think 50 is doable.
Yeah, I think that's basically the main thing is, well, if you get a yellow 150, you can just about stretch it. But the main thing to realize is, as I look up and down this field, Evan, I don't think we have anyone saving gas trying to make this, because if you're thinking it's going to go green, in order to try to stretch this, you're going to have to be saving a lot of gas. And in fact, you have 21 cars, all single file, separated by just over 2 seconds on the racetrack. No one in this lead pack is saving gas whatsoever. So none of these guys, I think, are thinking that they can make it if things go green.
Drivers on the lead lap, all within 2 seconds of each other. It's a waiting game now, but every single 2.5 miles is critical, because we're inside of 60 laps to go in the iRacing Daytona 500. So they are 10 laps out of the number that we said is one that you gotta hit if you want to be able to just try to put yourself in a situation where, if the cards fall correspondingly, you can try to finish this thing off with 4 stops overall and 2 since we went back under green flag racing conditions, if you include the one from the restart, to not really change things up too much. They're running full speed, full bore ahead, single file throughout. I will say, compared to the first couple of runs off of, every restart, we got guys grouped up, but we eventually ended up single file. I feel like we saw a lot more people looking to the outside, even if they didn't get a line going. In a lot of cases, we saw 3 cars try something. We always had people flashing their nose, trying to gauge the crowd, see if anybody would step in a line with them. We haven't seen a ton of that since we've gone back green in the most recent run.
We really haven't, have we, as these guys work themselves again, allowing themselves another lap down, and everyone is going to be likely thinking about when they get themselves back down on towards pit road. So everyone, I think, and that's going to actually be one thing, Evan, the fact that we're in this fuel situation we're in, we're going to have, I think, most of the pit stops we've had today, people have come down, over the course of about 3 laps. You'll see a couple guys come down early, then you might see a bulk of the guys the next lap, and then you'll get a handful of stragglers who are able to push in an extra lap or 2, come down that next lap. When we get this next pit stops coming through, which is going to be setting up to being potentially the final one, but probably going to see people needing to do at least a splash and dash, we're likely going to see all these guys push the fuel as long as they can and come down as one big group of cars.
And we know that when you come down pit lane as a group, well, things can get a little bit out of hand. From Daytona International Speedway, we've already seen on the green flag pit stops we saw earlier, drivers end up in issues. Not only did guys lose touch with the folks up in the front of the pack, and that's how we kind of separated. It was a 20-car lead pack early. We got that worked down to just about 10 cars before we finally got that first yellow past the halfway marker. Not only does that split people up, but of course, we saw the accident coming onto pit road, which involved a couple of drivers. Marcus Lindsay got in hot and collected about 4 to 5 different drivers who were minding their own business. That is a risk as well, and you're later in the race, so you're going to be a little bit more nervous. You're going to be a little bit more, I would almost say more cautious, but sometimes if you're going to be too careful, it's almost worse than just not focusing on it and just getting in there and doing what you know how to do, and that is just get clean in and out of the pit lane. So we'll see if the nerves get to anybody. Michael Guest is somebody who's been in this position many a times. Again, 2 wins already this year in the iRacing Daytona 500, looking for an unprecedented 3rd at the top split level. But for some of these other guys, well, yes, they're very experienced on the surface. A lot of these guys may not have had success in these iRacing special events like they would have liked, and they're in a good position late. Don't think about that too much.
Yeah, it is just that main thing, and how amazing for that number 9 machine of Michael Guest to be able to do this, especially starting where he started, 28th on the grid up to that race lead, did not run a qualifying time before this race started. So for Michael Guest, a lot of people, they like to really be, let's say, I guess, downers on the plate tracks. A lot of people like to say, oh, you just get out there, you put the car flat out, and really not a lot of skill or anything. There's no finesse at all whatsoever. But for someone to be that consistent over 4 separate events here at the top split level in this iRacing Daytona 500, is absolutely amazing. And look at the breakaway we've gotten out in front, by the way, Evan, while we've been talking. Michael Guest, Graham Bolin, Everett F. Lane, and Sam Harris, top 4, now have a 6, tenth of a second lead over Zach Novak on back. Those top 4 have started running really hard here as we come to the end of this fuel run and likely see pit stops here in about 4 or 5 laps time.
Getting closer and closer to the magic 150. Again, I still think you'd have to get closer to 155 if you're going to be able to do it without the assistance of a yellow flag to save fuel. Of course, if it's 2-3 laps, these drivers have been known to get creative to find that little bit extra. Will they be able to get there? Anytime now, drivers could be hitting pit road in this group of 1 to 21. Race leaders keep it on the right-hand side of the double yellow line for at least one more time around and get 2.5 miles closer to hitting that fuel number in the run to the end of this race.
Yeah, and everyone's still just not opting to come down pit road just yet, and you can't really blame them. You don't want to come down a little bit early. When things started out at the top of this race, that 0 of 200, lap 1 of 200, and once you got those first couple stops that come through, like you said, it's basically as long as you can do over 40 laps, the change after that is sort of irrelevant. Doesn't matter if you do 41, 42, 43, 44. Even if the race goes green, there's only so much time that's actually going to get you over the course of this event. So I don't think even if the race goes green all the way through, the person who comes down latest doesn't necessarily have a big disadvantage. Is 7 cars, I think, head their way, 8 cars head their way down on towards pit road, including that entire group of leaders. 32 machine ended up getting a bit of a spin as he comes down pit road. 23, I think, as well, gets caught up in that.
Yeah, way too hot on entry for the 32 car up on the outside of Bruno, and he ended up in the grass, lost control, and he tags Everett Lane, who was minding his own business. The 19 barely avoids contact, but Lane goes around, and that is going to really hurt his hopes at fighting for a win in this 500. The 23, though, is going to stick with his strategy. He will stay in the box now. Looks like he's trying to get some of the damage repaired on that car. He'll leave it as a 2-tire call only and burn out of the pit box, but he's lost touch with everybody else who's already back up on track.
Yeah, and what a big issue there for Jimmy, for those guys, for Everett F. Lane to get tagged like that as they came down on pit road, especially for Everett F. Lane. Everett has been having such a good run. To have something like that happen and get tagged by someone just basically overcooking the pit entry, that's something that is hard to come back from, and it's going to have to be a big, I think if you're Everett F. Lane, who I think is potentially a race-winning car, given the pace he had here late, I think he's going to have to hope for a caution to have any hope in that.
And of course, the number was a little bit shy of what we wanted to see, with drivers pitting at lap number 1 of 48. Drivers back down pit road for their second group. These drivers right in at lap 150. Patrick Mallett is about as hard as you can push it all the way out to the grass, but it looks like he did get it down to speed in time. So Mallett and Kerwin, Shearburn, Lowe, and Lane, looks like he's even back down pit lane, so the 23 car is in for more damage repairs. He does have some pretty good damage on the right side of that car, and that may very well be the evening for Everett F. Lane. So this second group got those extra 2 laps out of it compared to the first group down pit road. That could be critical when we're talking about a game of tenths of gallons if you can stretch it to the end, as we are inside of 50 laps to go from Daytona, 3/4 of the way home.
Yep, just 50 or so laps left in this one as they work themselves through the tri-oval once again, and people are going to start bringing themselves back up out there onto the racetrack. 5 Machine and Patrick Mallett still currently scored, I believe, as your race leader as they run, and see that 2 in the 8 car. That's Casey Kerwin and Chris Shearburn working together and getting a big run through corners number 1 and 2. And that 5 car is going to be a sitting duck here in just a moment once these guys get themselves wound up. And look at that other group of cars that's charging hard. Michael Guest up on that top group of the racetrack, getting a big push from the 17 of Graham Bolin through corners number 3 and 4. Those 2 are going to come and off towards your front straightaway once again, charging hard to the 5 Machine of Pat Mallett. And, well, everyone's going to go to the top side and leave Pat out to dry, and he's going to go from first back down to 5th here as they come through the tri-oval.
And I think without fail, that has happened every single time that we've seen green flag pit service, is that first group to come down to the pit lane, they sacrifice 2 laps up front. It is a very small gamble. Hardly, I would call it a short pit compared to the group we saw come down pit road 10-15 laps ago and have been sitting a lap down since then. So the gamble's not that big, but to be those first drivers to pit, you do lose the race lead for about a lap or 2, but you build up that draft speed and that momentum, and Maybe when you can see it when he pulled back out on track, there's just nothing that you could have expected Patrick Mallett to do. He's done a good job of blending to back in with the second group of cars. The 12 machine is in front of him, so Dallas Pataska was able to pass him up, but Casey Kerwin does stay tucked in line with him, so he will end up at the line in the number 6 position for Patrick Mallett, so things could be a lot worse. And the fact is also going to let this group catch up to the guys in front. But I still like that call by Michael Gaston. Them they are a little shy on the number we would have liked to see based on what we're thinking for fuel. I would imagine that means that they still have to pit one more time, and that is a guarantee without a yellow. But that allows them to maintain the race lead with another clean in and out for those that survived it.
And the big thing to keep in mind here, Evan, for this lead pack, I mean, Everett Lane was at one point part of this, but this sort of same trio, there's 3 of these guys were part of that domination as well, where we saw them stretching margin over people running 5th, 6th, 7th place here just before those pit stops. So still have most of those cars that were the fastest on the racetrack there near the end of that. The fact that most of those guys have gotten themselves hooked up and gotten an extra 4th runner for their own little pack, I think they're going to stretch away here from this lead group once again as we get nearer and nearer to the end of this race. And once you're talking about this sort of short stops that we're going to be seeing, if this race goes green, you're going to see people coming down pit road with about 6 or 7, I think, laps left in this race, maybe closer to 10, but it's just going to be a fuel-only stop, very short pit stop, and get yourself back out. If you even have only just a second on the racetrack compared to someone you're racing against, that is going to be more than relevant once we get to the end, as a little bit of lap traffic starts creeping up here on your race leader. There's going to be Tony Repisard in the 10 is going to be, in the 30 is going to be the car going a lap down.
And you can see the closing rate was pretty quick, so the 30 car steps up the hill, and a nice heads-up move by Repisard to get up and out of the way. Race leaders are able to stay on the double yellow line, and it is a rather uneventful lapping. As Repisard falls an additional lap down, he will join Malik Ray and Emmanuel Sanchez as the only drivers 2 laps down as we run at the moment. That lead group has gotten smaller once more, as it has every single time we've gone through pit stops. A couple of drivers have dropped off. An incident on pit road, we saw one earlier, we saw one that last time, as attributed to that. The lead pack now sits at 8 cars strong. Samuel Harris is trying to get with him at a 19, but I think he's in no man's land enough to the point that he will fall back to that secondary pack. In the top 8, trying to run away with this thing.
Yeah, top 8 having that nice big opening here since we've gone, since we've had those pit stops happen. It's always one that we've seen that happen. It was one point, this entire lead pack, 25 cars, is just one long train as we got to the end of that last run, and now top 25 separated by 34 seconds out on the racetrack. If you count a couple drivers near towards the end of the field, you can scratch about 10 to 12 seconds off that if you decide to be a little bit pickier and choosy and get to the top 20. It's only top 21, 16 seconds on the racetrack. So a couple of guys getting some penalties as they came down on towards pit road, likely for speeding or having their own little incidents as they came down, as we've seen a few times today, is down the back straightaway for the lead pack once again. And well, I think right now, Evan, the main thing is that it's just as simple as this. I think your race winner comes from this group of 8 cars unless we get a caution, because those drivers that are behind, Sam Harris, who's on his own little island, one about a second back from that group, and then you get another second back. You have likes of Nigel de Jong and Zach Novak, Alex Bergeron. There's a lot of talented guys in there, but it's going to have to be a big issue on pit road for these guys in this lead group to give up a 3-second advantage, even on that splash and dash pit stop we're expecting to see.
And this is exactly what we saw as well earlier in the race. That lead group is just a little bit bigger than the secondary pack. 8 cars compared to 7 in that second group. The speed advantage has to go to the top 8. All you can do if you're Harris and DeYoung, Novak, Bergeron, Bryant, Roy, and of course Corey Brown to make up that group 9th through 15th is run single file. Hope you catch up. And the 19 helps as they pick up Harris. Harris more so fell back to them than they picked him up, but that adds a little bit more speed. But at best, you can maybe match what the guys up front are doing now. If these guys can get to the end of the race, they go side by side, they start racing with each other, then maybe we're talking. Because 2.5 seconds isn't a terrible amount of distance between these first and second packs, and the last time by, the lap times were in favor of the lead group still, which is not what that secondary pack wants to see. But if they go side by side up front, they're not taking the fastest way around the racetrack, and you might be able to do something. You're so agonizingly close at those 2.5 seconds back. So close, but so far at the same time.
And at the same time, though, Evan, the other thing to think about is in this lead group, in those groups that are just off the race lead, I actually think that if you're in that little pack, this is where you need to be starting to save fuel, especially if you're someone who's like Brendan Coppinger, Richard Holiday, Joe Thompson, Ryan Lowe. If you're 10, 15 seconds off the race lead in those other groups, I think you need to be fuel saving right here, right now, as hard as you can. You didn't quite get the number to be able to make it if it goes green, but I think if you're that far off, you cannot win this race if it goes green regardless. Save fuel really, really hard. Hope for a late race caution, and I think if you can do that, if you save hard enough and get that late race yellow, or maybe even 2, you should be able to make it to the end from when you last came down on towards pit road, and then maybe you might just have an opportunity to win this thing.
And that's all you can hope for. Again, we said it a little bit over to this point now 2 hours ago when we took the American ethanol green flag in this race, that all you can hope for in a race that's 200 laps is to be there at the end with a shot at finding the checkered flag. Now, the ultimate goal to win the iRacing Daytona 500, and everybody's going to leave here relatively disappointed except for the driver that gets the win. But you've done good. You've gone through 160 laps. You haven't wrecked your race car. You haven't made any stupid mistakes for those that are still in this race. That's one and done. But this is no longer a 200-lap race. None of that matters. Inside of 40 laps to go now. Going to be 39 this time by. Expect it to get a lot more racy as we work it down.
Yeah, that's really the big thing. These guys are going to start getting much, much more aggressive, I think, especially in this lead pack. Now, that said, fuel being an issue, they may not get overly racy with one another because you still want to guarantee yourselves the ability to get down on towards pit road. And at the same time, though, Evan, with the fact that we're expecting these guys to have to come down pit road and do at least a splash and dash, it's one of those situations where I don't think we're going to see that top groove come in because you do not want to be the car that's pushing the clean air or pushing through the air. You want to half draft. That said, we see a couple drivers in the back jump up to the top side of the racetrack. I believe it's a 19 of Sam Harris and the 7 of Nigel DeYoung. So they say we're likely to not see a top groove come in. 2 cars jump up to the top and try to make something work. 7 Machine decides that that's not the place to be, and 19 of Sam Harris now up there all by his lonesome. So I think if I'm any of these guys, I just cruise onto that bottom groove. If I'm down there, I use the slipstream of the cars in front to save whatever fuel I can, and maybe I can have a slightly short fill compared to the drivers out in front, especially the 9 and 9 Michael Guest, who's been leading this pack pretty much for the entire way since we've gone back to green.
I'm impressed that that second group, as we followed them up to the field, was able to catch up to your race leaders, and is now one 15-car pack, top to bottom. I thought that those guys, that second group, when they caught up, I thought they might have gone just right to the outside of the racetrack. Just keep that little bit of momentum they had and went up top, because we talked about it earlier and we saw many a times an outside line form, but it eventually just stall out. That you need momentum and you got to get it in one swing of the bat. If you don't get the pass done, you might be able to stay there, but it's going to be very difficult to keep that pressure on within a large number of cars. But maybe 40 laps to go. A little bit too early to make that call, so everybody tucks in the line. We have a race that's going to be determined amongst these 15 cars. The second pack now becomes the one led by Brendan Coppinger, 16th position and 12.8 seconds back. He, Holiday, Thompson, Lowe, Murphy, Mitchell Moore in that pack for 21st position. Nowhere in a position to challenge the guys up front. Only thing that they can bank on now is a caution to twist this thing up one more time.
That's really the big thing we're waiting for, isn't it? Is we're waiting to see whether or not, 1, if we're going to get green flag stops, or 2, if we're going to get a caution, because everyone's just going to be like I said, patient in this entire group. You see a little bit of bobbing and weaving, but for the most part, everyone's just being calm, cool, and collected in this lead group of about 10 or so cars, 15 cars. You're not going to see anyone get overly aggressive. You might see a couple guys go to the top every now and again, like we saw from the 19 and the 7 just a couple of moments ago, but besides that, everyone is going to be just working together and being patient, trying to get to the end of this motor race as they come off of corner number 4 to bring us to 35 laps to go at Daytona International Speedway. Another lap car coming into frame. I believe he goes to the top side of the racetrack and going to be put in another lap down. Can't quite see who that is just yet, but he's going to make it easy on everyone. There's just one train of cars along the bottom and one guy going all the way up against the wall there, basically running the Larson line as they come off corner number 4 and down, corner number 2 down the super stretch once again. But it's just waiting for here, I think, for everybody, for the fans watching, for us talking, and for those guys driving. It's just a waiting game to see is it going to be green flag stops, or are we going to get a caution that gives everyone the green light to go to the end?
And it seems like it's been a long waiting game. It's the name of the game for these long endurance races. That lap car, by the way, Everett Lane, tough break. You know, somebody who did everything he could, put himself in the right position, stayed up front through a good length of this race, nearly 150 laps. He gets taken out by somebody else who comes slotted into his quarter panel, and Everett Lane falls 2 laps down. In times when it's not your day, it's not your day. He will not have a chance, it looks like, to fight for the win in the Daytona 500 here right now. And working lap 167. Again, it's no longer a 200-lap race. It's no longer a 40-lap race. It'll be 33 laps. Nothing matters anymore except for where you run now. And I think if we were good on field, just kind of trying to think this thing through, we'd see a lot more action. So I think everybody's still waiting on a number, and they've got that number in mind. Is it going to be everybody at once? Do you pit now? Get yourself off cycle. Take the short pit now, or do you stretch it as far as you can? Get that little bit out of fuel. Try to just finish this thing off, knowing that, well, what we've seen tonight is being the last one to pit isn't necessarily the best thing. The momentum is the right call, so maybe you alter what you think you should do to follow everybody else. Sometimes going with the crowd, the best move, because the draft at Daytona is what you live and die on.
I actually think I wouldn't mind if you have a couple of friends in this lead pack with you coming down a little bit early here, Evan, because, well, pretty much no matter what, I think because you're going to be doing a short fill, if you're in the lead group, you can come down pit road, and I think you can get off pit road and still stay on the lead lap, because you're only going to need a handful of gallons. It's not going to be a full service. You're not going to need everything that's in that tank going into the fuel tank on these cup cars, and you're not going to be taking any tires either. It's just going to be a little bit of a top off and get themselves back there, out there onto the racetrack as quickly as you can. So yeah, you might be a half lap down, but like you said, think about what we've seen from a lot of these guys, the likes of the 9, the 17, those guys up in front. We've seen those guys tend to be the earliest pitters here overall throughout the course of this event, and every single time, because they have so much momentum after coming down early, they basically just drive around the top side of those guys that are still trying to get up to speed and retake that race lead. That's what we saw from Michael and Bolin and Cooley, and Everett F. Lane within that group as well when they opted to come down pit road. Everyone else who came down a lap or two later, well, not much they had to do.
Another lap goes into the books. 31 laps to go from Daytona International Speedway. Gassed out in front, Bolin, Cooley weighing it, and of course Pataska through the top 5. The 14 moves up the hill a little bit. At this point, I don't think you could be searching around like that. It's funny that the only incident we saw was somebody moved up the hill and tried to come back down, and somebody filled that hole, and we had an incident back in turn number 4. That's the only incident we have seen this evening. But now if you're the 14 and Cooley, really anybody, I don't think you could afford to be sticking a nose out, because no one's lifting, I think, at this point. Yes, we're single file. Yes, the ultimate objective is to complete the fuel strategy, so you've got the Sunoco race fuel in the car to be able to get to the end of the race. But if someone's going to cars on the lead lap at this point, you would expect the longer into a race you go, that's exactly what's going to happen. This is the lowest that number has been all race long. And all but 4 of those cars are in the lead lap as you see the race leaders again coming through by the start finish line. Another lap down, only 28 laps to go now from Daytona International Speedway. The people in this lead group pitted at lap 148, 149, and 150. Longest we've seen anybody go tonight, 45 laps, would get them within 5 of the end of this race. But you could pit at any moment. It's the waiting game now as you hold your breath.
That's the big thing. Everyone's holding their breath, waiting to see who's going to blink and come down pit road first. We know that these guys can push to about 10 laps to go on the fuel. The question has to be whether or not they're going to do it early or do it late.
You've gone all this way, and you definitely want to be able to make sure you get your shot. You don't sit back and this isn't a race where, in the grand scheme of things, if you're running NIS and a NASCAR iRacing series over the course of 2018, you want to get good points. You want to be able to compete, for a series championship in this official series, but so difficult when you're running those full-length races on a week-by-week basis to have a special event like the 500 and treat it just like any other. And you might regret not having the points that you could have gained here tonight if you're unable to put it all together come the end of the season, but I think you just have to go for it. We mentioned earlier this is the 4th running of the 500 this year. We've seen, obviously, 3 different splits up until this point, 2 wins from Michael Guest, and also a win by Pierre Vernet in the 3 different top split races we've seen to this point. This is the last one. This is the one that you go for. I think it's an age-old adage. You bring home the checker or you bring home the steering wheel. This is the race that you put it all on the line for, and maybe you take that little bit of an extra risk and hoping to become an iRacing Daytona 500 champion. Going to be 26 laps to go now as of the next time by. Still Boland running in the number 2 position, arguably in the best spot. Michael Guest racking up bonus points for sitting up front and leading this race after starting way back in 28th. The way it runs now, assuming he doesn't fall significantly behind Brian Wayland, who runs in 4th position, he should be able to lock up the biggest mover tonight, as it is at plus 27 at the moment. Michael Guest, obviously, what would be a 3rd win in 4 tries on 2018 would be a remarkable start to him. 2018, and obviously if he's able to couple that up with a very successful 2018 campaign, we can look back on these speed weeks as where it all started. Michael Guest is doing something that I'm not sure anybody else has ever done in the iRacing Daytona 500. Who else is up here? Will Cooley, 3rd position at the moment. He's been in this thing all you can ask for. Pataska has been here all night. Same with Mallet and Kerwin and Shearburn. Watch that group for 7th, 8th, and 9th. Kerwin, Shearburn, and Novak. They've been in and around each other for the better part of 176 laps so far today. They very much well know each other. Maybe that is where a charge to the outside of the racetrack will come from when we have enough fuel on board to get to the end. 20 laps, I think, if that, left on fuel. 24 laps left to go in this race. Another piece of lap traffic going to go by on the outside. That is going to be Nick Krischke, who will fall 2 laps down from 25th position. Bruno, Mashburn, Murphy, Mitchell Moore, and Powers as the drivers 1 lap down. Still waiting for this thing to bust wide open. 15 cars, single file. Down to 30 laps to go from Daytona. And, for the guys in the top 5, I think you stick with the strategy. You wait till the end. You can make a move from the top 5 with 5 laps to go, 4 laps to go, 3 laps to go. It's up here. But I'm waiting for the desperation to start to seep in to the likes of Corey Brown, Alex Bergeron, Robbie Roy. We saw on the very first run of this race, 35 laps in this iRacing Daytona 500, a group of drivers build up on the outside of the racetrack. They were not able to go all the way to the race lead, but they were able to find their way to blend in with the inside, find a spot here, find a spot there. Some of them gained to more than 10 positions. They ended up a top 10 spot. By the time we came down pit road, it was a gamble, because we weren't able to find a spot in line. You would have had to go all the way to the back of that pack to get down low to be able to pit, but it worked then. Does somebody running outside of the top 10 take that risk now? Because I'm not sure, unless we have a big wreck, which it's Daytona, and you can never say never, but if we don't have a big issue, I don't know if Robbie Roy, Alex Bergeron, and Corey Brown can win this race inside of 5 laps to go from 13th, 14th, and 15th position. It is Daytona. Anything is possible. You don't even have to have a clean race car. Just have something out on track, and you have a shot at winning if you're there on that last lap. But for running this long with 21 laps to go and going to be 20 to go to the next time by, I am surprised that we haven't seen those desperation moves out of the folks in the back. There's a good bit of separation center of the pack here between Shearburn, Novak, and DeYoung. It'll tighten up rather shortly, I think. The top 15 separated by 1.4 seconds. No single file. It's a waiting game, and it's exactly what you see, and it's probably what you'll see later on today. in the Daytona 500. That waiting game. You've got yourself in a spot. Here come the pit stops. Michael Guest wants to come in at 21 laps to go, and Boland's in with him.
Got 3 of your front runners all coming down pit road. Graham Boland, of course, Michael Guest, like you said, and Dallas Pitsaka. They are the 3 drivers that opt to come down here early with 20 laps to go and take the short fill. Everyone else is staying out, and like I said, I really like this call. I talked about it a little bit, about whether or not it would work out. Let's see if it does. You see it's going to be a short fill, as those drivers are already out and rolling back out onto the racetrack, easily going to stay on the lead lap here, Evan, and all 3 of them had perfect pit stops. They all come out together. The 9 of Michael Guest have to drop back a little bit to catch one of those guys. That is Graham Boland, the second in line, but that's not going to be a huge issue. They're going to be up to speed and have momentum when this other lead group eventually comes down pit road. And now, when do these guys blink? I don't think anyone else came down pit road just yet.
And a smart move by Boland. He was going to pull away from the 12 car of Dallas Pataska. Coming off the pit road, lifted for about 2 to 3 seconds, stayed at about 87 miles an hour, then put the foot back down. It would have been only he and the 9 instead of that group of 3. So a smart move to keep those strength in numbers. And now you will see what the 9, 17, and 12 can do again, because they pitted first. That would mean that, well, if we go by the trends we've seen today, they will have the momentum come when everybody else pits. But is 3 cars enough to keep pace with 12 cars still in line at the front of the field?
Yeah, 12 guys out in front, and still they cycle around another 2.5 mile trip around this racetrack, and none of the front guys opt to come down on towards pit road. And the other thing, Evan, to think about is, because you think about the 9 of Michael Guest, where are they out there on the racetrack? Race leader Will Cooley, he's coming onto the backstretch right now. Michael Guest and company, they're in corners number 3 and 4. They're gonna have enough time, considering the fact that it's only gonna be 8 or 9 laps before that lead pack ends up coming down pit road. They are gonna maintain lead lap status. So I like this from the top 3, because even if we get a caution, all of those drivers from the lead pack are going to have to come down pit road, and these 3 drivers will be able to get past by through and be able to get to the front of this field regardless of what happens. This call from the top 3, I think, is absolutely flawless. I think they have an advantage if it goes green, and I think they have the advantage if we get a yellow.
Sounds like in a pretty good position as that group runs right now. 33 seconds off of the race leaders. There's a secondary pack, Coppinger, Holiday, Thompson, and Lowe. They have yet to come down to the pit lane. They've just been stuck at that 12-second deficit that they find themselves running with at the moment. Cooley, now your new race leader. First time tonight, I believe, we've seen that 14 machine out in front of the field. And again, assuming it just by being in the right place at the right time, that brings the likes of Malik and Kerwin back into the conversation. 2 guys that we've been talking about for the better part of the night. Shearbird right there, Novak right there. That is a group that I said to keep an eye on, and now that they are closer to the front, they might be even more lethal. Last lap for Will Cooley, who leads this lead group, was a 44.862. Compare that with Michael Guest, who leads the group of the 3 cars who pitted with a 44.984. They are slower in that group that had already pitted. Now, a 10th doesn't sound that bad, but if you do a 10th every lap and these guys pit 15 laps later, you're talking about 1.5 seconds of difference, and that could be too much to overcome.
It could be a big one indeed, as you just looking right there. Like I said, Michael Guest, he just did a 45.0. We jump over to the 14 of Will Cooley, 44.8. So a couple tenths of a second advantage, but going to those guys. But is it going to be enough to really matter one way or another? The 44.6 for Will Cooley as they come across the stripe this time. That's going to be the big question mark, as we're about 5 laps to go, I think, from the rest of this group likely coming down on towards pit road. We went, of course, back to green flag racing on lap 109, and, well, everyone came down and off of pit road, lap 150, lap 151. So anywhere from about 190 to 194, 195 is, I think, where we can expect most of this lead pack to come down. The fact that they haven't came down just yet actually surprises me. I think I was expecting a couple people to maybe jump the next lap or 2 after we saw the first group come down and do that short pit, but everyone opting to stay out, and they're going to drive past that pit entry once again, this entire lead group of cars. So about 5 laps out, 6, maybe 10 laps out from the final round of pit stops for these guys, unless we get a caution.
And that would tell me, with how quick that move made against Boland and Pataska was, that they had that pre-plan. They were chatting with each other. We didn't hear anything over the driver radio, so there was obviously no desperate plea for somebody to jump on board. They knew exactly what they wanted to do. They knew exactly how to do it, and they dropped off and didn't fill anybody else in to the point where it was a late dive as well, so there was no indication. Nobody could have followed them down pit road. I don't think pitting one lap after would have helped you at all, because you would have been just simply chasing what they were doing. So I think these guys are sticking on what is the normal strategy, what everybody else kind of had in mind, and it was the audible call, the differing call maybe, if you will, by that group of three. They're the ones that are shaking it up.
Like I said, I love that call from them after thinking about it. The fact that the pit stop would be so short, you guarantee that you stay on the lead lap, and then no matter what happens, I think those three will end up cycling to the lead. We've seen them pit early pretty much all day. I think no matter what, they'll either have the momentum when those other cars end up coming down pit road and start trying to get themselves back up to speed, or if we get a yellow, like I said, they'll be able to latch onto the back of all the runners that are out there. Everyone else will likely need to come down pit road and at least take a little bit of fuel, because we know that we're about 8 or 9 laps away from the point where people could actually make it without coming down pit road once again. We sort of hit that time point where it's doubtful we're going to get 2 cautions at the end of this thing. That said, we're approaching 10 laps to go. So I think regardless, I think those 3 lead drivers are going to cycle their way to the lead at some point. Is it going to be for the race lead, though? Is it just going to be amongst the top 5? That's the big question if it stays green.
And the big question is if. Only 1 yellow so far to this point. We've seen one of our iRacing Daytona 500s already this year go with just 1 yellow. That race was won by a driver who you might have heard of out in front of the field many a times tonight, Michael Guest, who leads that tertiary pack back in 17th position. But if we make it that far, once the pit stops happen for this group, it's no holds bar. Right now, Guest, Bullen, and Pataska are working together because they're the outliers. It's just them 3 versus everybody else on the lead lap. So they have an incentive. They have to work together for their own sake. This larger group, though, once they pit, they have no reason to help one another, and that's when the gloves will come off.
That's the big one, isn't it? Is where are these gloves going to come off? I think we're going to see people be calm until they hit pit road. There's no point in getting overly aggressive just yet and trying to get to the head in line right here, right now, and potentially costing yourself the race. They come off 4. Let's see if anyone comes down towards pit road. No, so we make it to 11 laps to go with no one else from this group coming in. So going to be an interesting situation of when these guys opt to come down. Do you save it to the very, very last moment, or do you call it a little bit earlier like those guys in that trio did? That's the big question.
Still waiting, this time by 190 laps going to be complete. Only 10 laps left to go at the Daytona International Speedway. Who's going to win this one? Will Cooley out in front of the field. Going to head down once he does to pit stall number 7. But in contrast to the likes of Wayant, who's going to have to pit way down pit road and pit stall number 23. It's going to be clean. You got to be clean in and out without incident. And we have seen a handful of drivers, and a couple of them break off. They're not all going to come down together, but a few drivers are in. Nigel DeYoung comes down pit road, along with the 16 of Alex Bergeron and the 19 of Samuel Harris. Corey Brown is in as well, so 4 of the 12 are in now.
So 4 of these drivers opt to come down pit road, as you say. Now, here's the big question. Where's that 9 machine of Michael Guest? He's rolling in corners number 3 and 4. Let's see and ride on board with him and see where those competitors end up coming out around him as he comes off corner number 4. He's working himself down towards the tri-oval right now, and let's see, is he going to be able to jump? Look down to the left. You can see tire smoke in the pit lane and cars exiting pit road. Michael Guest has a big head of steam. He's going to get by one of those drivers they try to merge up, but where are the rest of them? Are they down on pit road, or are they already away clean?
Like for the group up front, at least, Cooley and them still out onto the racetrack, so that group hasn't come back down to the pit lane. You do have the group of drivers who just pitted. Samuel Harris is there. Obviously, the group of Pataska, Bullen, and Guest are halfway down the back straightaway. They're going to catch up to the 13 of Corey Brown, and they should be able to get around him because the 13's got no drafting help. Are they going to be able to get, though, to Nigel DeYoung and Alex Bergeron? They have hooked up, and they may put themselves in a catbird seat again just by nature of being with that 12-car pack. Gained about 2 seconds of time over the Guest pack. Here comes Guest, Bullen, and Pataska, though. They've got a good run. Meanwhile, race leaders coming down pit road. Will Cooley, very timid on entry, gets passed by Wayant on the way into pit road. The 32 of Bruno's there. Roy as well down pit road with Novak.
So number of drivers, pretty much the entire rest of this lead group coming down on towards pit road. And let's see, will Michael Guest be able to pick up the spot over Bergeron? They're wheel to wheel, 3 cars up top, 2 on the bottom. There's one third car sort of in line. Are they going to be able to get clear? Michael Guest is clear. The 17 is, but their partner, the 12 machine of Dallas Pasaka, he's not yet gotten down there, but they are going to leave him out to dry as they drop down in front of Alex Bergeron to take the lead of that little group. But now where's the rest of everyone else when they end up coming down pit road? We have another car that stayed out. They're now hitting pit road right now, the likes of Pat Mallett, Casey Kerwin, Chris Shearburn. The 3 of them are all coming down on towards pit road.
That group now blends back out with the racetrack, and it should, I think, be everybody who has now come down in completed service. Guest leads the group of drivers who has already pitted, but he's got to catch up to a couple of the stragglers, but they're so spread out, this might work out for the 9 car still. There's one of them, the 50 to Blake Bryant. Pass going to be complete. They have to catch up to Will Cooley, Zach Novak, and Brian Wayant. The first driver in ends up the first driver out, but he's going to get passed up. The 3 and the 14 don't want to work with him. So Novak is going to pass the 14 to Cooley. He's going to follow, and the 33 has to tuck in line. Here comes the 9 car of Guest, though. I think they're going to have enough speed to do it. That short pit and the momentum that comes with it might be the difference maker. Wayant tries to throw a block. How aggressive is the 3 and the 14 machine going to be down the back straightaway as here they come. The 33 is pinching this line all the way to the outside. It looks like it'll box out Nigel DeYoung in the 7. And the 9 car of Guest is going to try to go high side. Here we go. Battling for the race lead at Daytona. Coming to what's going to be 6 laps to go.
So it all comes down to this, a bunch of trios of drivers working themselves back into the pack, and the entire field is going to end up getting themselves stacked back up. Pretty much the 9 of Michael Guest not quite having the motor to get himself to that race lead. Where's the 5 machine of Patrick Mallett? That's him on your screen right there, that red with the bright yellow number 5 there coming off corner number 4. Casey Kerwin, he's in the pack, so your race leader is still the 5 of Pat Mallett. They head down the super stretch, a little bit of contact from that middle group. I think that was the 33 car who was in the middle of Brian Weiner. He got the 9 machine of Michael Guest a little bit loose, but it's Will Cooley as well as Zach Novak, I believe, who are going to maintain their positions here in 2nd and 3rd place. Pat Mallett, though, has to worry because he has no help around him, and he's going to be a sitting duck when this group of 10 cars get to him. 5 laps left to go at Daytona.
Big speed difference between the groups. The 30 cars get to stamp it out of the way. Here comes Zach Novak right to the outside. The 5 isn't even going to try to go up and throw a block. He will stay on the inside and hope he'll find help. He will, and it'll come to form of the number 9 car of Michael Guest, who tucks it behind him. Big shot to the back end as he tries to and successfully keeps Mallett in front. The 3 was so close to clearing, but Novak can't do it.
Everyone's still pushing really hard as Michael Guest is going to take that 2nd spot and still push this 5 machine of Pat Mallett. And now here's the big problem for those guys up top. We've not seen that upper groove work all day, all morning. It has been all about the bottom. Now, if you're any one of these guys, if you want to have a chance to win, if you're 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th in line, you have to try to get to the top side of that racetrack. But as I say that, look at the cars up top. They were even with your race leaders at about the start finish line, and then now 6 cars deep up there on the top side of the racetrack. Michael Guest is going to take a peek up to the top, but he immediately ducks down back to the bottom, harassing the mirror of that 5 machine of Pat Mallett. Michael wants to make it 3 out of 4 in iRacing Daytona 500s this weekend. He currently sits 2nd as he comes off of corner number 4. 3 laps to go, though, for Pat Mallett. Will he be able to hold on, or will we get a big incident that happens so often late in races at Daytona?
At this point, the yellow flag would end this race. 13 cars fighting it out. An outside line is growing to back of the pack. The 3 of Zach Novak's gone to the outside. The 14 behind to Cooley. The 17 of Boland just pulled up there as well. But you could argue that on a Guest in the catbird seat. The 5, all he can do is hold the bottom and hope for the best. If the 9 car wants to make it happen, he needs somebody to go up top with him as we come to 2 laps to go. This time by the iRacing Daytona 500. Wayant sits 3rd, Kerwin 4th, and DeYoung in 5th. Is how they line him up, but don't look now. That outside is coming, still led by the number 3 Toyota.
it's entirely possible that the winner of this race will be the person who knows when to jump to the top. 5 miles left at the Daytona International Speedway, and Pat Mallett continues to lead the way. That red number 5 has been consistent and relevant all day long, but he hasn't led a whole lot of laps here today, but he's leading the ones when they count. Bit of lap traffic down the Daytona super stretch. You see that upper groove of cars is split off, about half the cars up to the top, half of them to the bottom. A couple people getting cold feet, thinking about getting back into the single file line through corners number 3 and 4 for the penultimate time, and they're setting up Pat Mallett. Look at the run that the 9 of Michael Guest is going to get, and he's going to work himself through the tri-oval, white flag waving, going to finish this one under green, and the 9 of Michael Guest had the run.
That back used the run, went to the outside of the racetrack, and has got help as Wyatt goes up there. The 7 of DeYoung will fill the hole on the inside and try to help the 5, but it's not going to work. What a move by Michael Guest to the race lead as he comes at a turn number 2. Outside, not done yet. Oh, there's going to be contact. There goes the 5. Spinning to the inside is Patrick Mallett, and the 9's got no help. Guest goes inside, and more contact. The 16 of Bergeron. Somehow they hang on, and they're going to wreck behind him. Battle for the race lead at a turn number 4. Here comes the 2 of Casey Kerwin to the outside. Side by side to the start-finish line, and it is going to be to the line. The number 2 of Casey Kerwin. Yes, sir. 8/1000ths of a second to the iRacing Daytona 500 win.
What a final lap. I think we had about 3 different leaders over the course of that, and it was the number 2 Ford Fusion of Casey Kerwin to get a big number run from that 2 machine, and by 8/1000ths of a second take the race win over Michael Guest. You can see the gap between that Ford and that Toyota across the stripe on your screen. Now, what a finish after 500 miles of racing at Daytona. One of the fastest Daytona 500s you're ever going to see on iRacing. Caution free, pretty much. 1 single caution at the finish, and besides that, it was all green. That 2 machine of Casey Kerwin, he's going to throw it down onto that big Daytona logo on the infield grass, and he is going to burn them down here in the tri-oval.
And for all of the contact on that last lap, Casey Kerwin just sat back and waited for it to come to him. It looked like the 33 was going to be in the best position. He went down to turn a door slam. The 9 hurt himself, pushed up the hill, and the 2 barely threads the needle. Through the 2 of them, they meet each other. The 9 comes up, the 2 comes down, and the 9 machine all in the gas, sliding across the start-finish line, unable to come back even. And Casey Kerwin, who stayed back, wasn't in all the excitement until turn number 4 would have mattered the most, takes the clutch win in a photo finish, and they saved the racing for that final 3-4 lap exchange, and it was a whale of a white flag battle. I don't even think half the cars that took the white flag made it to the checkers. Doesn't matter for Casey Kerwin, though. He is a champion in the iRacing Daytona 500 in 2018. Total number of drivers who finish on the lead lap in this one is going to end up at 17, all the way back to Chris Shearburn from top to bottom. And as this one rounds out, let's take a look at your Race Spot TV full race results at the end of 500 miles. Casey Kerwin started 4th. He was in it the whole time, and he is your winner from the Daytona International Speedway. Michael Guest comes home in 2nd, just 8/1000ths short of making it a 3rd win for him on the weekend. He can walk home in solace knowing that he won 2 of these events this weekend. Blake Bryant comes home in 3rd position at the end of the night. Brian Wyatt was in a fantastic spot, gets beat out by Bryant to the line and ends up in 4th position. Graham Bolin comes home in the number 5 spot. Will Cooley comes home in 6th position. 7th tonight for Alex Bergeron. Corey Brown with an 8th place finish. 9th for Dallas Pataska, and 10th for Zach Novak.
11th spot as we move on down the order. Brandon Coppinger comes home in 11th. Richard Holiday in 12th.
On through 11th position is going to be Brandon Coppinger. Richard Holiday will come home in 12th. Ryan Lowe is 13th, with Joe Thompson in 14th, and Robbie Roy 15th. Final 2 cars in the lead lap at the back of it all, limping home for Nigel DeYoung in 16th and Chris Shearburn in 17th position. The rest of these drivers, well, a lot of them took the white flag at a lead lap 18th and 1 lap down for Patrick Mallett. Josh Mitchellmore in 19th, and Glenn Murphy Jr. comes home in 20th position. 21st for Mike T. Bruno, 22nd for Samuel Harris. Logan Powers is 23rd. He is the last driver to finish at 1 lap down. 24th position and 2 laps down for Garrett Mashburn, Nick Kirschke, and Manuel Sanchez. Everett Lane, 3 laps down, 27th position. 28th for Tony Reposard. Travis Schaefer in 29th. 30th for Malik Ray. And then to round things out, the rest of these drivers did not bring it home at the end. The nights ended early. That'll be 31st, Jimmy Mullis. 32nd, Dustin L. Johnson. 33rd, Brendan John Kohler. Marcus Lindsay, 34th, and Matt Adams in 35th position. That's a look top to bottom at your full race results. And Randy, I think we'll take these final 2 laps around on board, courtesy of the view of your race winner, Casey Kerwin.
That's going to be the plan. You're going to ride on board with that race winner, Casey Kerwin, for those last couple laps and see things how he saw them as they got to the end of this one. And boy, oh boy, what a finish it was for Casey.
And coming to the 2 laps to go, he was running in 4th position. He was behind Wayand, Guest, and Mallett. And that's what everybody's still single file. We were waiting for this thing to break wide open. And you'll see his view of the 9 set this thing up. It was a fantastic move. Picture perfect, you could argue, for the likes of Michael Gass to put himself in a good position because he was second. So as you go into the quarter, you'll see the 9 car up in front, that second car line. When they head to 3 and 4, he backs off. He lays back. That's when the 2 car goes to the outside. That gap gets filled by the 7. But the 9 right here, it's all Michael Guest. Sets him up, and again, the 5's a sit and duck. There's nothing he can do. So the 9 car goes to the outside of the racetrack. And now you're side by side for the race lead. At this point, it's not looking all that well for Casey Kerwin. The 9's got the run. The 7 tried to help the 5 machine out, but it does not work. This is where things get crazy. The 2's on the outside. That's not a place I want to be in. You see the contact right there. 5 car spins to the inside. That's 1 wreck avoided. So then the 2 of Kerwin goes, picks up the 33, and now he's pushing way out to the race lead. Contact. Car spins to the inside. Another incident avoided. And at this point, the race leaders started fighting with each other. They forget about the 2 of Kerwin. He'll split the gap as we come into turn number 4. And from this point on, the drag race to the start-finish line, a little bit of contact, but in the end, the Daytona 500 championship goes to the 2 of Casey Kerwin. Well thought out. He could see what was unfolded in front of him, tried to get himself out of that line and get something going up top, and the right place at the right time buys him a spot in victory lane.
And just how perfectly played by that 2 car. Placed the car perfectly, and what a drive there from Casey Kerwin. Absolutely flawless here at Daytona. Could you ask for a better finish?
I think that sets the bar for Tuesday's race with the NASCAR PK for Series iRacing.
It sets the bar for today's race.
Yeah, no, we saw a great race yesterday on the rear road side of things in the Xfinity Series. We just saw an 8/1000th of a second here on the iRacing service, so anything less than that, I guess, will be thoroughly disappointing.
That's really the big one, isn't it? Is just waiting to get some guys in here to do some post-race interviews. But man, that was I don't think I've seen a better plate race. I know that a lot of people, it was a lot of single file, a lot of quiet racing, but the fact that we had a lot of green flag racing, I'd rather see a single file race go green than a double file race that's caution filled. And especially when it gets to the finish like that, long race like this, drivers are going to be patient. So things are, might often just get single file just naturally regardless. But to have the race finish like that, boy, oh boy, what a run that was.
And we knew it was coming. Again, the whole time you're single file, these guys are waiting because they want to win the race. Nobody gets, anything extra. There's no style points for making it side by side when there's no reason to. So you just put yourself in the best position you could be in. And I think as well, just because of the way that one caution flag flew, put us on a little bit of a weird note with the pit service, and we had to see everybody come down and splash for a little bit inside of those final 10 laps. If we were on our regular strategy, we would have been done with pit stops 40 laps before the end of the race. At that point, we would have just been able to race it out hard, but I think everybody was waiting on the fuel, and that's why there were so little laps left by the time everybody was able to go for it. But the fact that we were able to see that hard of racing at the end, but I think most importantly at the end of the day, Randy, finish this race under green's the best part.
Yeah, that's the main thing. It would have been there's a few terms I can't say on air that would be able to describe it, but it would have been disappointing to say the least to maybe have something happen coming to the white or with 2 to go that brings it out under yellow, and you just hand that win to the 5 car. Not that it's anything against Pat Mallett, but to just have the race finish like that, it's just not the way you ever want to see a race like this finish. To have it, to the fact that they got to the white, and I knew that this race is going to finish under green. I knew we were going to have an entertaining 2.5 mile trip around this Daytona International Speedway. I honestly thought it was going to be the 9 of Michael Guess who's going to close it out, but I think Michael he saw him set up that move coming off of 3 and 4 where he opened up the gap to that 5 car Pat Mallett so he'd be able to get a big run and slingshot his way around. I think if Michael Guess had waited to do that exact move until he was coming off of 2 on the white flag lap, I think we're talking about the 9 car in victory lane today.
I was just thinking the exact same thing, because the reason he was able to set up the 5 is because the 5 of Mallett was the sit and duck. There was nothing else he could do but to keep the right foot down and hold the yellow line. The 9 made a beautiful pass, laid back, set it up perfectly, went to the race lead, but he went to the race lead with a whole lap left to go. So he was then the sitting duck when things started to fall apart. We got to the white. To be fair, once we got there, we got our fair share of wrecked race cars in, but he had a whole lap as the sitting duck. So he's trying to block one run and then block another run, and you just killed off too much of your momentum to be able to hang on, and maybe if that move was made a little bit later, would have been a different result.
Yeah, it could have gone either way. There's so many ways you could potentially think it up, because it's easy for us to say up here in the booth, oh, Michael Guest could have easily just, sat there and, maybe been a little bit more patient, but at the same time, someone could have potentially got a run on Michael, got to the outside of him, and taken that opportunity for Michael to jump up top to be able to make a move as well. So, yeah, it might be easy for us on one hand to say that Michael should have waited. I still think he should have, but at the other point, it's entirely unpredictable of what could have happened, especially with some of the lap traffic that just sort of untimely can itself around the race leaders as they were racing through that final lap. They did a good job to get themselves out of the way, admittedly, so well done by all those cars a lap down, knowing the fact that the fight for the race win was coming through, and you never want to be that car who's a handful of laps down who ruins the run to the checkered for everyone watching. Good job by them to get themselves out of the way and give us the amazing finish we saw tonight.
Photo finish in this one as Casey Kerwin takes the win to the tune of 8/1000ths of a second. And we are now down trackside with the driver of the number 2 Ford. Casey, congratulations. You're a winner in the iRacing Daytona 500. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I've been trying to win one of these things for like 3 years now, and it's either wreck 20 laps in or with 20 to go. But yeah, the race was pretty clean. I mean, we only had that one caution, and I was somewhat involved there. Whenever Malik got turned, I jumped high and I got into Jimmy, and then I got a little bit of front end damage, but we got it patched up good. And then there we were just